were the most powerful angels of heaven, cast out by God himself, driven down into the endless abyss. Was Satan truly the mastermind behind the fall of the 200 angels on Mount Hermon? And what reason could justify a book more than 2,300 years old? The Book of Enoch, a text that exposes the very roots of demonic origin and the fall of the angels, being removed from the Western Bible for nearly 1,000 years. Tonight, we promise to unlock the entire classified record of the Watchers and the Nephilim before the Great Flood. This video will answer the question, what was human life like when people lived alongside angels and a race of giants? Why were the forbidden teachings of weapons metallurgy and dark arts considered crimes that corrupted human morality? We will take you deep into the most terrifying secrets of giant rule on Earth thousands of years ago, and help you understand why events like the Great Flood or unexplained cataclysmic fires were not merely natural disasters, but acts of judgment from God, from the divine realm itself. Do not leave yet, because at the end of this video, the truth about corrupted souls, shadows manipulated by Satan, that continue to harm humanity even today, will be revealed in the stillness of this night. Relax your body completely and allow the slow, steady voice to guide your subconscious. The revelations hidden for centuries in secret caverns are about to awaken. In the sweltering heat of the Judean desert, a young Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Ejdib was chasing after a stray goat. He came to a stop before a narrow crack in a sheer limestone cliff overlooking the Dead Sea. To see whether the goat had hidden inside, Muhammad picked up a stone and hurled it into the deep darkness of the cave. The sharp sound of shattered pottery ripped through the stillness of the desert. It was not merely the breaking of an ancient jar, but the cracking of a barrier that had separated humanity from secrets buried for 2,000 years. Muhammad climbed inside. What he saw before him defied belief. Tall clay jars stood silently in the shadows, like sentinels guarding time itself. Inside them were scrolls of goat skin and papyrus carefully wrapped in linen. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, the greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century. Yet among the hundreds of manuscript fragments uncovered at Qumran, one discovery shook scholars to their core: fragments of the Book of Enoch. For these decaying scrolls did more than recount history. They revealed a terrifying chapter that had been erased from official religious texts. It was the story of the Watchers, celestial beings, who rebelled against heaven, descended to the earth, and suffered the most severe judgment ever pronounced by the Most High. Most notably, when the Book of Enoch was discovered in the Qumran caves among the Dead Sea Scrolls. What stunned scholars was not merely the fact that Enoch existed, but that its content aligned seamlessly with the religious worldview of ancient Judaism. It was not a scattered legend, nor a late fictional composition. What must be made clear from the outset is this: what was found at the Dead Sea was not a complete copy of the Book of Enoch, but multiple manuscript fragments drawn from different sections of the text. Together they are sufficient to confirm that the core content of Enoch existed well before the time of Jesus, and was carefully preserved by Jewish communities who regarded it with seriousness and reverence. The material from the Book of Enoch found at Qumran centers on 4 major themes. First is the account of the Watchers. The text recounts that a group of heavenly beings appointed by God to watch over the order of the world willingly abandoned their appointed station. They descended to the earth and took human women as wives. This act is not portrayed as a minor lapse, but as a deliberate rebellion against the order of heaven. From this fall, the Nephilim were born. These giant beings were not only physically abnormal, but also brought with them widespread violence, chaos, and moral corruption across the earth. Enoch describes the world before the Great Flood as a place where humanity was crushed between the power of the Nephilim and the forbidden knowledge taught by the fallen heavenly beings. The second theme is the judgment of God. Through visions granted to Enoch, the book makes it unmistakably clear that the Most High does not ignore rebellion. The Watchers are bound and confined in the deepest places of darkness until the day of judgment. The Nephilim are destroyed, and their spirits become wandering entities that spread suffering upon the earth. This represents one of the earliest explanations for the origin of evil in the world, long before Christian theology had fully taken shape. The third theme concerns the structure of the cosmos and the heavens. Enoch speaks not only of morality or history, but also describes the order of the heavens, the roles of angels, and the laws governing the universe. These passages reveal that the Qumran community believed the visible world to be only one part of a far greater divine order in which every action carries consequence. The final theme is judgment and hope. Although the Book of Enoch contains imagery that can feel unsettling, its purpose is not to instill fear. Its central message affirms that the justice of God will ultimately be established. The righteous will be preserved, and rebellion, whether originating from humanity or from heavenly beings, cannot endure forever. It is important to understand this before this discovery came to light. The Book of Enoch had nearly vanished from Western history, surviving only in translations preserved in Ethiopia. The compilers of the Orthodox biblical canon had deliberately excluded it, labeling it dangerous and heretical. And yet the discovery of Enoch beside the Dead Sea proved an undeniable truth. For ancient religious communities, the story of the Watchers and the Nephilim giants was not a fictional legend. It was a central element of their faith and of their fear. These blackened, fragile fragments are the final pieces of a long-lost puzzle, confirming that the account of fallen angels cast out by God was once believed to be real. In other words, the Book of Enoch at Qumran does not tell a strange story. It explains why the world required purification, why the Great Flood took place, and why moral order is essential to the survival of humanity. And now, after sleeping in darkness for millennia, they are ready to tell their story once more. The identity of the 200 Watchers. To understand the sheer horror and gravity of the rebellion of the 200 Watchers, we must first look at the structure of power within heaven itself, a realm where every being is created not only with differing authority, but also with sacred boundaries that cannot be crossed. For not all angels are the same. Within the order of the heavenly realm, each rank is established for a specific purpose, and each stands at a different distance from the throne of God. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, for example, are archangels, beings who wield immense authority, carry out the direct commands of the Most High, and embody unwavering loyalty to the heavenly order. By contrast, the seraphim, radiant six-winged beings, remain constantly near the throne of God, burning in pure worship and absolute holiness. The cherubim, majestic and formidable, are entrusted with guarding eternal sanctity and protecting boundaries that no created being is permitted to violate. The Watchers, also known as the lineage of the Grigori, belong to a lower rank, yet one far more active in nature. Their name is not accidental. In ancient tradition, Watchers refers to those who keep ceaseless vigil, while Grigori in Greek usage means the ones who do not sleep. They were not created to rule nor to judge, but to observe continually and preserve the order entrusted to them. They were in essence the field observers of heaven. In order to guide early humanity, they were granted forms and minds closest to that of human beings, enabling them to understand, communicate, and dwell near mankind. But this privilege became a double-edged sword. Because they lived so near to humanity, they became vulnerable to the most earthly of emotions: desire, craving, and pride. It must be remembered that these 200 were not beings who sought to overthrow the throne of the Most High. They did not plan open war against God. They were deserters. They abandoned their eternal duty in exchange for a finite dominion on earth, a realm where they could indulge their desires and be worshipped as living gods of flesh and bone. In terms of power, these Watchers were formidable. At first, they looked upon the world with the eyes of guardians. But over time, that gaze began to change. They no longer merely observed. They began to linger with desire. They no longer watched to protect. They began to watch with the eyes of predators. They followed the growth of humanity, and eventually they noticed the beauty of human women. In the eternal stillness of the spiritual realm, a seed of rebellion quietly took root. They no longer wished to stand in the shadows as protectors. They longed to touch, to possess, and to rule. They did not want to remain witnesses to history. They wanted to become the ones who rewrote it. Leading this rebellion was Samyaza, a being of exceptional authority among the Watchers. He held the rank of Shemyazaz, a name meaning the bearer of the mighty name. Within the hierarchy, Samyaza alone possessed the authority to summon 20 other leaders, each commanding a group of 10 angels, forming the command structure of the 200 Watchers. As the leader of the rebellion, Samyaza possessed extraordinary powers of persuasion and spiritual manipulation. He did not force the 200 angels to follow him through violence. Instead, he appealed to logic and exploited their fear of isolation, compelling them to listen and bow their heads. It was Samyaza who compelled them all to swear a binding oath of mutual support, mutual imprecation upon Mount Hermon, binding the fate of immortal beings to a single cursed vow. I fear that you will not agree to carry out this deed, and that I alone will have to bear the punishment for so great a sin. And temptation ultimately overcame fear. Upon the mist-covered summit of Mount Hermon, long regarded as a point of intersection between heaven and earth, the 200 Watchers together swore a dark and irreversible oath. They bound their souls to a covenant from which there would be no return. They would descend to earth together, take wives together, and endure whatever consequences might follow, no matter how catastrophic. Alongside Samyaza, one figure cannot go unmentioned: Azazel, the cunning rebel against God. He is often confused with Satan, but in the Book of Enoch, Azazel occupies a distinct role and receives a distinct punishment, one of exceptional severity. Unlike others who were driven primarily by physical desire, Azazel corrupted the human mind itself. He stole the secrets of heaven and taught men how to forge swords, spears, and weapons of war, introducing organized violence into human history. He taught women the use of precious stones, metals, cosmetics, and adornment, transforming natural beauty into a tool of seduction and deception. This knowledge was not merely technical skill or aesthetic refinement. It shattered the boundary God had established between creation and divine authority, causing humanity for the first time to believe that life, death, and destiny could be controlled by human hands alone. And at that very moment, the moment the rebellious angels descended the mountain, the order of the universe collapsed. The Watchers ceased to be guardians. They became invaders, and a terrifying era was about to begin. The birth of the Nephilim, the giants who ruled the earth. After the 200 Watchers descended from the summit of Mount Hermon, the natural order of the world was torn apart. They did not merely bring forbidden knowledge. They brought a biological transgression, an unnatural union that violated the laws of creation itself. The crossing of immortal beings with mortal women gave rise to a grotesque hybrid race, the Nephilim. These were not simply giant children. They were a fundamentally broken species hybrids who carried the power of angels, yet were imprisoned within fragile mortal flesh. In the beginning, the appearance of the Nephilim was seen as a miracle. Imagine beings of immense stature rising hundreds of feet into the air, their heads brushing the clouds. Each step they took was enough to shake even the most ancient mountain ranges. Early humanity, small, vulnerable, and powerless, looked upon these beings with overwhelming awe. People fell to their knees, offered sacrifices, and worshipped them as demigods walking openly among men. But what humanity did not realize was that unimaginable danger dwelled within those colossal bodies, and that awe soon turned into absolute terror, because they carried the blood of the Watchers' beings who did not require food, yet possessed enormous physical bodies. The Nephilim developed an insatiable hunger, a bottomless void of consumption. In a short span of time, Earth's entire ecosystem collapsed beneath their appetite. All human food reserves, all harvests cultivated over countless seasons, vanished in a single meal consumed by one Nephilim. Fields were stripped bare. Herds numbering in the tens of thousands were reduced to piles of white bones. Humanity could only weep and cry out to the heavens for mercy. But the horror did not end there. When food became scarce, the Nephilim turned on humanity itself. They treated mankind as nothing more than livestock. Screams echoed through valleys as massive hands lifted entire families into the air and devoured them whole. Ancient texts record, they began to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, and the fish of the sea. They devoured one another and drank one another's blood. Imagine a world where towering giants, tall as great towers, slaughter one another, tearing flesh apart and drinking blood amid fields filled with death. The earth, once a beautiful garden, had become a vast slaughterhouse soaked in blood and defiled beyond measure. The blood of the Nephilim, this mixture of the divine and the dust of the earth, seeped into the ground itself, corrupting the land to such an extent that heaven could no longer remain silent. It was the brutality of the Nephilim that led inevitably to the end of this age. The cries of the last surviving humans, together with the groaning of the defiled earth itself, rose through the clouds and reached the throne of God. This is why the Most High made his most severe decision, a great flood. Not to punish weak and suffering humanity, but to completely cleanse the world of the Nephilim and of the fallen fathers who had brought them into existence. A global purification. A final act to erase the nightmare unleashed by the 200 Watchers. The terrifying confrontation between the Watchers and the Archangels. Yes, this act of betrayal pushed the Watchers into a direct confrontation with the Archangels, the great leaders of heaven entrusted with carrying out the supreme will of God. If the Watchers were deserters from the heavenly ranks, then Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel stood as the generals of heaven beings, appointed with absolute authority over justice and sustained by unwavering loyalty throughout all ages. In the passages of the Book of Enoch that were later excluded from the biblical canon, the Archangels were the first to sense the spreading corruption upon the earth. They witnessed the land soaked in blood, the order of creation twisted out of alignment, and the cries of humanity rising through the layers of heaven. Standing before the throne of the Most High, they brought forth their accusation against the 200 fallen Watchers and the brutal hybrid race born from them beings who had turned the world into a domain of violence and chaos. From that moment, an epic confrontation began, not between equals, but between eternal justice and rebellion that had crossed every sacred boundary. Leading the heavenly host was Michael, the Archangel of justice and war. He embodied the order established at the dawn of creation itself, not blind fury, but divine authority set in perfect balance. Imagine the moment Samyaza, the arrogant leader of the fallen, standing at the heart of his corrupted dominion, surrounded by strongholds razed through human worship, when the sky above suddenly tore open. Michael descended in blazing radiance, and the brilliance of his presence caused the eyes of the fallen to burn with terror. Samyaza, once a bearer of cosmic knowledge, and the order of the heavens, now stood trembling before the sword of Michael's justice. In that presence, every argument dissolved, and every stolen claim to power collapsed into emptiness. There was no negotiation. Michael overcame Samyaza not only through might, but through a punishment rich in symbolic justice. He compelled Samyaza to witness the consequences of his own choices. Before his eyes, the Nephilim, once regarded as living embodiments of power, were driven into madness, turning upon one another until the last of their kind fell. When the rebellious bloodline came to its end, Michael bound Samyaza with chains forged from the fire of heaven and cast him into deep abysses beneath darkened mountains, where he remained confined until the final judgment. Meanwhile, Raphael received the task of dealing with the most cunning of the fallen Azazel. Unlike Semyaza, Azazel sought concealment within the desolation of the desert, carrying with him the stolen secrets and the stain of forbidden knowledge. Raphael, the archangel of healing and purification, approached not with rage, but with the authority to restore creation to its intended order. He turned the very earth defiled by violence into an instrument of justice. According to the Book of Enoch, Raphael split open the desert of Dudel, creating a deep chasm filled with jagged stones, and cast Azazel into it. He covered the abyss with thick darkness and weighed it down with massive rocks, confining Azazel in a suspended state of existence, awaiting the fire of the last day when all things would be fully purified. The most devastating task fell to Gabriel, the archangel of divine messages and judgment. Gabriel did not strike down the Nephilim with a sword. He carried out justice in a far deeper way, reaching into the core of their chaotic nature. He stirred hatred and madness within the minds of the giants, causing the violent instincts embedded in their hybrid blood to erupt. The beings who once ruled the world together now regarded one another as ancient enemies. A self-destructive massacre unfolded before the helpless eyes of their fallen fathers. Giants, towering hundreds of feet tall, charged at one another, tearing flesh and drinking blood until the last one collapsed. The earth shook beneath the weight of immense bodies, preparing for a great rain that would wash away every trace of that brutal age. Last came Uriel, the archangel of revelation and divine understanding, entrusted with the mission to approach Noah. Uriel carried the message of the coming great flood, not as a threat, but as a final boundary drawn between the age of fallen beings and a new age for humanity. Through Uriel, the righteous were given the opportunity to endure, to preserve their lineage, and to carry forward the memory of divine order. The confrontation ended not with cries of victory, but with a heavy silence settling across the heavens. The 200 watchers lay bound deep beneath the earth, their spirits held in shame as they awaited judgment. Tartarus, the eternal prison at the bottom of the abyss. Yes, the punishment reserved for the Watchers went far beyond banishment from heaven. Their rebellion crossed a boundary deeper than any ordinary transgression. For this reason, the Most High issued a judgment without precedent. He commanded the archangels to escort the fallen ones to the deepest, darkest region within the entire structure of the cosmos, a realm existing beyond light, beyond time, beyond hope itself. This place bears a name that strikes fear into every celestial being: Tartarus. Imagine an abyss lying beneath even the realm of the dead, deeper than Sheol, deeper than any layer of judgment known to humankind. Their time no longer flows as it does in the created world. Every moment stretches endlessly like a living sentence. It is in this place that Semyaza, Azazel, and all their followers were bound with unbreakable chains, chains forged from heavenly fire and the righteous wrath of the Creator. They were cast into caverns, lined with jagged stone where the ground lies frozen and the air itself is thick with darkness. Their faces were covered, their bodies fixed in place, their wills crushed beneath the weight of judgment. They exist in total confinement, stripped of motion, stripped of communication, reduced to existence alone. Within that death-like stillness, the only sound that echoes is their own screaming, repeating, endlessly bouncing off stone walls, lingering until the day of final judgment. What astonishes scholars most lies not only in the severity of the punishment, but in the unexpected parallels that emerge across civilizations. When the Book of Enoch is compared with other ancient traditions, a startling detail appears. In Greek mythology, Tartarus is likewise described as the deepest prison, the place where Zeus confined the Titans, vast, powerful beings who rebelled against the divine order of the Olympian gods. This correspondence opens a profound question. Could the Watchers of ancient Jewish writings and the Titans of Greek epic actually represent the same group of beings, remembered under different names? Both descended into the human world. Both unleashed chaos beyond restraint. Both ended their existence in chains at the bottom of the abyss. From this, a shocking hypothesis emerges. Perhaps the myths scattered across the world were never inventions of imagination. They may instead be fragmented memories, different retellings of a single dark historical event so overwhelming that humanity buried it deep within the collective unconscious. Those who once wore the brightest glory of heaven now exist in absolute darkness. Those who once longed for freedom enough to betray the divine realm now endure the loss of even the ability to move. That reversal stands as the heaviest sentence of all. They remain imprisoned there for thousands of years, far beneath the earth's crust, upon which humanity walks each day, serving as living evidence of arrogance carried beyond all limits. According to ancient texts, their presence at the depths of Tartarus is not passive. It generates a heavy current, a circulating malice, within the earth itself, slowly accumulating through the ages. And that very presence serves as a warning. A reminder that when divine order is shattered, the consequences never end with a single generation. They can lie dormant for millennia, waiting for the moment when chains weaken, so that darkness may once again seek a path back into the world. And the world they once sought to rule moved steadily toward the moment when vast waters would sweep it away, opening a new chapter in the history of humankind. The Great Flood, the judgment of God. This was not an ordinary rain. It was the wrath of God interwoven with mercy. The Book of Enoch describes how the windows of heaven were thrown wide open, while at the same moment, vast fountains burst forth from the depths of the earth, erupting like monstrous forces unleashed from confinement. At the same time, beneath human feet, the ground convulsed violently and split apart, releasing subterranean waters from the deepest abysses, shooting upward hundreds of feet into the air. The waters did not rise slowly. They surged forward like a conquering army. Waves as tall as mountains swept across the land, devouring everything in their path. Thunder roared in unison with the cry of the oceans, forming a funeral anthem for a civilization that had decayed from within. Caught in the raging waters, fragile humanity screamed in despair. All the wealth they had spent a lifetime building vanished in an instant. Even their own bodies, the lives they had guarded so carefully, slipped beyond their grasp. A single violent wave was enough to drag everything down into the depths of the sea. Even the Nephilim giants, who once believed themselves invincible, who had consumed human flesh and drunk the blood of their own kind, now trembled as the water rose past their knees, then their waists, and finally swallowed their arrogant heads. Their immense strength became meaningless before the surging waters. There was nowhere left to flee. The highest mountains where the Watchers had once sworn their oath of rebellion became mass graves for their grotesque hybrid offspring. The roars of the Nephilim were smothered beneath the raging waves, returning a deadly stillness to the earth. Every magnificent temple, every dark secret art was swept away into nothingness. But why did God employ such a devastating measure? The answer lay not only with the Nephilim, but with the corruption of humanity itself. Under the influence of the fallen angels, humankind no longer reflected the beings created in the image of God. They had been altered. Moral integrity became a rare and fragile concept. The world of that age turned into a mire of cruelty, betrayal, sexual corruption, and blood-soaked rituals carried out openly in the daylight. Humanity learned the craft of weapons from Azazel, and they used that knowledge to slaughter one another without restraint. They abandoned compassion and embraced domination and defiled physical pleasure. The human heart filled itself with dark schemes. The corruption of human souls merged with the brutality of the Nephilim, transforming the earth into a place where evil stood exalted as if it were a sacred belief. For this reason, the Great Flood arrived as a warning written in blood and water. When humanity casts aside its own humanity in pursuit of forbidden knowledge and unrestrained desire, the cost unfolds as total destruction. The old world sank beneath the sea, leaving behind a raw and cleansed land, waiting for a new beginning to rise from the remnants of what had been erased. Yet the death of the body did not mark the end. The Book of Enoch reveals a terrifying truth. Because the Nephilim carried the blood of immortal angels, their souls could not descend to hell, nor ascend to heaven. They left their bodies and became trapped within the veil of the earth. These spirits became the demons' formless entities, endlessly craving possession of human bodies in order to reclaim the sense of domination they once held. They stand as a reminder that even though the waters cleanse the earth of corrupted flesh, darkness, and evil, continue to search for ways to return, remain watchful. Even so, within this severe judgment, God preserved a place for mercy. The purpose of the Great Flood was not to end humanity, but to prepare the way for renewal. Amid the vast ocean filled with death and ruin, a single wooden vessel moved steadily forward. Noah, the one man who preserved purity within his heart, carried with him the seed of a new humanity. Noah's Ark, a new beginning for humanity. When the final screams of the Nephilim faded beneath the raging waves, when the gold-clad palaces of the fallen sank into the eternal depths of the sea, the world entered a silence that chilled the soul. Sky and ocean merged into one, erasing every boundary that had once existed. Amid an endless expanse of water that covered even the highest mountain peaks, a solitary presence continued to drift steadily between judgment and hope. It was the Ark of Noah. So who was Noah? And why were only he and his family preserved by God? In the Book of Enoch, Noah is mentioned very early as a figure already known within the heavenly order. Even before his birth, Noah's arrival was regarded as an extraordinary sign in a world rapidly sliding toward corruption. In the Book of Enoch, chapters 106 and 107, the account of Noah's birth is recorded with details so striking that even his own father, Lamech, was shaken to the core. When Noah was born, the child appeared unlike any other. His eyes shone like the sun. His skin radiated brightness, and his first cry sounded like a blessing offered to God. Confronted with this sight, Lamech trembled with fear. At that time, the world was filled with hybrid offspring of the Watchers, and he worried that this child might also carry blood that did not belong to humankind. Lamech went to his ancestor Enoch to seek understanding. And there Enoch delivered a prophetic confirmation. He declared that the child belonged fully to humanity, that he was born in purity, and that he had been chosen by God to preserve the righteous lineage when judgment would come upon the earth. Enoch affirmed that Noah would survive an event unlike anything ever seen in human history, and that through him life would be restored. Beyond this, in the Book of Enoch, chapters 65 through 67, Noah is described as one who received early warning of the coming great flood. He heard rumblings from the depths of the earth, witnessed underground waters beginning to stir, and sensed that the order of the world was approaching an irreversible turning point. These visions did not arise from imagination, but from God's permission given to prepare the one who had been chosen. What is remarkable is that the bond between Noah and Enoch extended beyond bloodline alone. Enoch is portrayed as one who passed down moral wisdom and reverence for God to his descendants before being taken from the world. Noah inherited that legacy not in the form of secret arts or hidden knowledge, but through a life of upright conduct, guided by an understanding of the boundary between what was permitted and what exceeded the order of creation. While most of humanity pursued the power of the Nephilim and became intoxicated with the forbidden knowledge taught by Azazel, Noah grew in quiet faithfulness, devoted to his family, to honest labor, and to a belief that was steady rather than performative. His household, consisting of Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, is described in the Book of Enoch as sharing a disciplined life marked by faithfulness and reverence toward God. In a society that worshipped the strength of the Nephilim and reveled in dark rituals, Noah's family stood as a rare refuge of moral order. For this reason, when God resolved to cleanse the world, Noah was not chosen at random. He had been recognized, preserved, and prepared across generations. The Great Flood was not only an act of judgment, but the moment when Enoch's prophecy reached its full fulfillment. The presence of Noah aboard the simple wooden vessel, built according to precise instructions conveyed by the Archangel Uriel, became a clear affirmation that righteousness would continue to be preserved even as judgment swept across all creation. In the nights that followed, while the world remained intoxicated with power and pleasure, Noah began to experience visions unlike any he had known before. In these visions, he saw the ground trembling, massive reservoirs of water coiling beneath layers of stone, and the sky growing heavy as though restraining a rain beyond all known limits. He saw humanity continuing in a false sense of security, even as the world around them approached an irreversible moment. Through these recurring dreams, the command gradually became unmistakable. This time Noah was brought before the venerable Lord God himself. A radiance surrounded him, causing Noah to tremble and yet feel deeply honored. Noah was instructed to build a massive wooden vessel. The ark was to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, divided into 3 solid levels, with many compartments capable of carrying life through a judgment unlike any the world had ever known. The wood used for the ark was the most durable of its time, sealed with pitch both inside and out, as though every fiber had been prepared to withstand water and the passage of time. A single door was placed along its side, and above it a narrow opening allowed light from God to reach the interior, even when the world would be submerged. Though Noah did not yet fully understand why such visions had come to him, he began building at once. He constructed the ark on dry land in a place where the sea itself remained a distant concept. Each strike of his hammer sounded like a quiet testimony. Year after year, the vessel took shape while the world around him remained absorbed in power, pleasure, and the forbidden knowledge of fallen angels. People passed by, stopped to stare, and laughed. They called the ark a symbol of outdated fear. Those who once lived under the shadow of the Nephilim saw Noah as someone who failed to grasp the spirit of the new age. Sorcerers and ritual priests turned the project into a spectacle for public mockery. Yet Noah continued his work with calm resolve. He built the ark not to argue, but to obey. His family stood beside him, sharing that slow and steady rhythm of life, while the rest of the world rushed toward collapse. Decades passed. The ark stood complete, and the sky began to change. On that fateful day, the sun no longer rose. Birds flew low, animals grew restless, as though all of creation sensed something humanity deliberately refused to see. The sky was suddenly swallowed by dense rolling black clouds, churning like living beasts. Bolts of lightning tore through the darkness without pause, revealing an eerie blue glow across the heavens. Rain began to fall not in drops, but in massive torrents pouring down like waterfalls from the sky. Noah looked up at the heavens and knew the appointed moment had arrived. He opened the door of the ark and allowed the animals to enter 2 by 2. Strangely, they came in pairs, in quiet order, as if guided by an unseen hand. Creatures once scattered across distant lands now converged upon a single place, passing through the wooden doorway set into the side of the ark. People stood watching the scene with curiosity, mixed with mockery. They called it a strange coincidence. They reassured themselves that nature always held mysteries beyond explanation. No one turned inward. No one turned back. Noah and his family stepped inside one by one. Each step felt like the closing of a chapter of the old world. When the last person entered, the door was shut. At that very moment, water from the sky began to pour down in overwhelming force, like cascading floods. At the same time, beneath the feet of those still watching, the ground shook violently and split apart, releasing subterranean waters from the depths of the abyss, erupting hundreds of feet into the air. The waters did not rise gradually. They surged forward like a colossal wall of destruction, sweeping away everything in their path. Thunder roared together with the fury of the oceans, forming a funeral symphony for a civilization already decayed from within. Overcome with terror, people scrambled for higher ground, shouting one another's names in chaos. But the waters rose faster than their steps. Structures once believed to be unshakable vanished beneath the murky flood. The ark lifted from the ground. No one steered it. It was raised and carried along the course ordained by God. Inside, Noah and his family prayed, entrusting their lives to the mercy of the Lord. Outside those rough wooden walls lay a vision of utter devastation. Noah looked through the small window and saw only towering black waves surging and swallowing everything in sight. Ancient trees were torn from the earth houses, shattered, and piau-ated away. And farther off, the massive silhouettes of the Nephilim screamed as they clung to mountain peaks, slowly disappearing beneath the waters, only to be swept away like dry branches. The Nephilim, who once exalted themselves above the clouds, who once consumed human flesh and drank the blood of their own kind, now appeared as desperate beings, clinging to the last rocks in hopelessness. Their immense strength held no meaning against the raging waters. Their cries were smothered by the foam of the waves. All magnificent temples, all dark forbidden arts were washed into nothingness. Heaven had issued its decree no impurity would remain upon the earth. In this way, for 40 days and 40 nights, the heavens poured down unceasing torrents of water, as though all the layers of the sky had opened at once. Waves battered the sides of the ark day and night. The wind howled without rest. Yet the vessel held a strange and steady balance, as if cradled within an unseen protective embrace. The 40 days of relentless rain passed, and still the waters continued to rise. The land vanished completely. Even the highest mountains were swallowed. The entire world became a vast, endless ocean, where the memory of the old civilization sank into silence. Inside the ark, Noah and his family continued their daily prayers. They cared for the living creatures, prayed, and waited. No one knew when the waters would recede. Faith alone was sustained with every breath. After many months of drifting, the ark gradually encountered resistance. Not a violent collision, but a gentle settling, as though the earth itself had extended its hands to receive it. The ark came to rest upon the slopes of Mount Ararat, amid a world still covered by water. Noah waited. He did not rush outside. He watched for signs of life. First, he released a raven. It flew out circling above the waters and did not return. Then, he released a dove. The bird came back with nothing in its beak. 7 days later, Noah released the dove again. This time it returned with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. That was the first sign of renewal. The earth had begun to find peace once more. When the ground became dry enough, Noah and his family stepped out of the ark. The first thing he did was not to build a home nor to plant crops, but to build an altar. An offering was made in reverence and gratitude. Then the Lord appeared, and a covenant was established. In the sky, still heavy with the mist of judgment, a rainbow emerged. Not as a decoration of nature, but as a living seal of a promise. God set the rainbow as the sign of the covenant between himself and every living creature. The rainbow speaks not only of survival, but of responsibility. It serves as a reminder that humanity has been granted a new opportunity to live in alignment with the moral order set in place from the beginning. The earth was entrusted to humankind to be guarded, not to be seized. Power was given for protection, not for domination through violence. The story of Noah ends in deep quiet, yet its lesson continues to echo through every generation. The image of the rainbow in the sky stands not only as a promise of peace, but as a boundary. It reminds humanity that the boundary between heaven and earth is sacred and inviolable. Whenever humanity deliberately disrupts that order, whenever people attempt to seize power that does not belong to them or align themselves with dark entities in exchange for forbidden knowledge, destruction waits at the end of that path. When people live uprightly, maintain reverence toward God, and respect the sacred boundaries of creation, life is preserved. When the human heart aligns with goodness, blessing naturally follows. The Great Flood did not merely close an age. It opened a path in which those who uphold moral integrity are carried through raging waters, and life finds a way forward, even through the greatest storms of history. But do not celebrate too quickly. Though the surface of the earth has been cleansed beneath its crust deep within the caverns of the abyss of Tartarus, the 200 Watchers remain awake in chains. Their freedom has been stripped away, yet the remnants they left behind, the bodiless evil spirits of the Nephilim, still wander in the shadows, waiting for vulnerable souls to continue the unfinished work of their fathers. And as we look upon the ruins of the Nephilim age, a haunting question arises. Did Samyaza and his followers simply fall through momentary desire, or behind their collapse was there a darker hand, a more ancient presence quietly orchestrating the entire drama of destruction? Many have assumed that the rebellion on Mount Hermon and the pride of Lucifer are one and the same. Yet in truth, we are facing two distinct layers of transgression. One seeks to seize the throne of God, The other seeks to claim dominion over the world of humanity. Is there an invisible thread connecting the pride of Satan with the greed of the Watchers? Let us now step into an even darker chapter of forbidden history. The truth about the mysterious relationship between the Watchers and Satan. In ancient texts hidden from the biblical canon, the relationship between Satan and the Watchers emerges as an underground framework driving the corruption of the world. This is not a single-threaded story, but a multi-layered network of ambition, desire, and judgment permitted within divine order. The Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees together reveal that although these two forces arose from different motivations, they ultimately worked in tandem to push humanity toward the brink of destruction. The fall of Satan occurred first rooted in pure pride and absolute self-exaltation. In ancient Jewish tradition and prophetic writings, Satan is identified by the name Lucifer, the light-bearer, a being created with radiant beauty, sharp intellect, and exceptional power among the heavenly hosts. He once stood close to the center of celestial authority, fully acquainted with the hierarchy of the heavens and the workings of divine power. Lucifer was created to dwell within the higher order of heaven, where light and power are inseparable from the duty of service rather than to guard the earth. Yet instead of compassion and love for all creation, Lucifer harbored deep jealousy toward Adam and Eve, whom God cherished and formed in his own image. The task of safeguarding these small and fragile humans stirred intense resentment within him. He rejected a divine order in which humanity occupied the moral center. He envisioned a new dominion, one ruled entirely by celestial intellect and angelic strength. In prophetic visions, this ambition appears as the desire to raise his throne among the stars and place himself on equal footing with the Most High. He sought the worship and acclaim of countless angels. He set himself in opposition to God and even pursued a struggle for the divine throne itself. This jealousy fueled his eventual betrayal. He ignited a rebellion so vast that it shook the structure of the universe. Lucifer drew a third of the angels into his illusion of absolute power and freedom detached from obedience. He transformed the heavenly realms into a battlefield between ordered light and rising darkness, where the Archangel Michael's symbol of humility and unwavering faithfulness led the holy host against the great dragon and his rebellious followers. Although Lucifer possessed immense power and intellect, his pride became the critical weakness that left him unable to withstand divine justice. The conflict ended with his complete defeat. Stripped of all former glory, he was cast from heaven by God. Like a bolt of lightning hurled into the depths, along with the fallen angels, losing forever his exalted station and becoming Satan, the adversary who deceives and spreads destruction among humanity on earth. This rebellion became the foundation for every fall that followed. Upon this groundwork, the later transgressions of the Watchers unfolded, extending the tragedy of the cosmos from heaven down to the world of humanity. While the Watchers did not seek God's throne desire, governed their actions, leading them to transgress against humanity itself, God's creation. In the days of Jared, the Watchers abandoned their appointed posts, drawn toward human women and the longing to produce offspring. This fall carried a biological and cultural nature, fracturing the created order at its very root. Though driven by different impulses, these two paths of rebellion moved in parallel and reinforced one another. Satan planted doubt, pride, and the hunger to exceed divinely set boundaries within the human heart. The Watchers brought down the means to enact that corruption weapons, magic, astrology, metallurgy, and knowledge beyond the moral capacity of early humanity. One force manipulated the inner life, the other supplied the instruments. Together they accelerated humanity's descent. The crucial link between these two powers appeared after the Great Flood. The offspring of the Watchers and human women, the Nephilim, perished in divine judgment. Yet their souls possessed a unique nature. They belonged fully neither to heaven nor to humanity. The Book of Enoch describes their spirits leaving their bodies and roaming the earth as evil spirits driven by a longing to inhabit flesh and reclaim their lost dominion. The Book of Jubilees refers to Satan by the name Mastema and records a decisive moment. As God prepared to imprison all these spirits, Mastema stepped forward and petitioned him. He requested that a portion of the Nephilim spirits remain to serve as agents of temptation and trial for humanity. The request received partial approval. 9/10 of these spirits were bound, while 1/10 remained under Mastema's authority. From that point forward, the spiritual army under Satan's command consisted of the souls of the hybrid offspring created by the Watchers. Within this structure, Azazel occupies a unique role. Azazel stands as a chief watcher responsible for teaching warfare weapon-making and extravagant adornment. The Book of Enoch records that the entire earth became corrupted by the knowledge Azazel spread. Bloodshed, multiplied violence became normalized, and humanity learned to dominate one another through force. Many Jewish traditions perceive a parallel between Azazel and Satan. Satan functions as the accuser and manipulator of souls, while Azazel devastates the world through culture, technology, and physical violence. One corrodes morality from within. The other turns the earth into a blood-soaked battlefield. Distinct roles, yet both serve a single unified process of corruption. The final destinies of these two forces unfold along different timelines. The Watchers were bound and imprisoned in subterranean depths, such as Dudael, shortly after the Great Flood, awaiting final judgment. Satan continues his activity within the world, fulfilling the role of tempter and accuser until the appointed time when he will be bound and ultimately cast into the lake of fire, along with all fallen angels. Seen as a whole, the relationship between the Watchers and Satan forms a generational alliance of darkness. The Watchers shattered biological and moral boundaries, producing the Nephilim and the host of wandering spirits. Satan inherited that host to sustain a long war against divine order and to draw humanity away from the path established at the dawn of creation. This account stands as more than an ancient story. It offers an explanation for the systemic origin of evil, where heavenly pride and earthly desire converge, leaving an enduring imprint on human history that continues to echo even today. How does Satan appear in the mythologies of all nations? As mentioned earlier in the beginning, Satan was Lucifer, a heavenly angel who dwelled in paradise. Lucifer was regarded as the most perfect angel ever created by God, the chief commander among the angels. Yet precisely because of this exalted position, pride took root within him, and from pride arose envy. In Jewish tradition, it is said that Lucifer grew envious of an ordinary man named Job because Job received praise from God. Driven by jealousy, Lucifer used deceitful words to persuade God to allow him to test Job, inflicting suffering upon his body and stripping him of his family and all his possessions. In truth, Lucifer never intended to test Job's faith. His true desire was to push Job into unbearable anguish so that Job would curse and resent God. Yet God turned Lucifer's actions into a trial of faith. In the end, Job remained steadfast and unmoved by Lucifer's malicious trials, and Lucifer failed. God then appeared before Job and bestowed blessings upon him. This story reveals Lucifer's deep arrogance and his inability to tolerate anyone rising above him. Later, God spoke to the angels and revealed that in the final era of the world, the Messiah, the Savior, would descend to redeem humanity. God commanded that when this time came, Lucifer was to submit to the Messiah. Because his envy had grown immense, Lucifer perceived this command as a profound humiliation. From that moment, he became the instigator of a rebellion against God, unleashing a catastrophic war in heaven. Through cunning and deception, Lucifer succeeded in seducing 1/3 of the angels, leading them to follow his illusion of power and freedom without submission. The outcome of this confrontation between good and evil was inevitable. The rebel host led by Lucifer suffered complete defeat. At that time, the Archangel Michael, empowered by God and joined by the faithful angels, crushed Lucifer's forces entirely. Lucifer and his followers were expelled from heaven and cast down into hell, where he became a ruler, a demon king. From that moment onward, he bore the name Satan. This is the story of the fallen angel Lucifer, as preserved by Western culture and Christian tradition. Yet upon closer reflection, a question naturally arises. Both Eastern and Western cultures regard hell as a place where sinful souls endure severe torment in repayment for their crimes. And yet Satan appears to occupy a very different position. Though he lost eternal blessing in heaven, Satan entered hell not as one subjected to punishment, but as a ruler. Why is this so? To explore this question, it is helpful to turn to Eastern concepts of reincarnation, especially the Buddhist doctrine of the 6 paths of rebirth. According to this doctrine, after death, beings are reborn according to the law of karma created during their lifetime. Some return as humans, some are reborn as asuras, hungry ghosts or animals to repay karmic debts. Those with heavy wrongdoing descend into hell, while those with great merit may be reborn as heavenly beings in higher realms. Eastern traditions describe the heavens as consisting of many levels. Taoist teachings speak of 9 heavens. Buddhist teachings speak of 33 heavens. Other traditions mention 36 or 28 levels. While there is no single unified number, it is clear that the heavens are understood as multiple realms rather than a single one. Those with virtue or spiritual cultivation may ascend to different heavenly realms, depending on the depth of their cultivation and merit. Such beings are called heavenly beings, possessing greater beauty, longer lifespans, and more abilities than ordinary humans. The higher the heaven, the longer their lifespan, and the greater their blessings. Yet even the highest heavens remain within the cycle of rebirth. True liberation from reincarnation occurs only when one transcends the 3 realms, the realm of desire, form, and formlessness. Only then does one truly enter heaven in the ultimate sense. This is a core Buddhist teaching and a foundational Eastern worldview. By contrast, most modern Western and Christian beliefs reject reincarnation. They maintain a binary view after death. One either enjoys eternal bliss in heaven or suffers eternal punishment in hell. However, ancient Western belief systems, especially those of ancient Greece, also taught reincarnation. The mathematician Pythagoras and his followers firmly believed in reincarnation, holding that the soul is immortal and continues into a new body after the physical body perishes. This belief likely explains why the Pythagorean school advocated vegetarianism. They refrained from eating animals, believing animals may have once been human. Legend holds that Pythagoras believed in reincarnation because he remembered his own past lives. In one distant incarnation, he was said to be Aethalides, the son of Hermes, the messenger god of Greek mythology. Hermes granted Aethalides one wish, excluding immortality. Aethalides asked to retain his memories after death, and Hermes agreed. Another renowned Greek philosopher, Plato, also taught that the number of souls is finite. Birth does not create a soul, it merely transfers a soul from one body to another. Plato stated, "When a soul returns to the world, the body it inhabits will resemble its former one, along with its innate tendencies and character." Thus, ancient Western civilizations also possessed an understanding of reincarnation, though this knowledge gradually faded for reasons unknown. Why is this relevant here? The author believes that acknowledging reincarnation and the existence of multiple heavenly realms within the 3 realms provides a framework for understanding Satan's condition. The heaven where Lucifer once served as Archangel existed beyond the 3 realms at a level far higher than them. When Lucifer committed his transgression and became Satan, the phrase "cast into hell" may in fact mean that he was cast into the 3 realms. For a divine being who once existed beyond the 3 realms, falling into the cycle of rebirth and losing eternal bliss would constitute suffering comparable to hell itself for ordinary humans. Within the 3 realms, where opposites arise naturally, good and evil gods and demons, Satan came to embody the principle of evil. In this way, he became a demon king within the 3 realms, or at least within the first heavenly realm into which he descended, standing in opposition to the righteous gods and heavenly beings there. From that point forward, Satan gained dominion over evil, becoming its ruler and driving humanity toward corruption and degeneration. Satan continually reincarnates across worlds and heavenly levels, sometimes falling further into lower realms. Throughout this process, he perpetuates evil. In each realm he enters appearing as a demon king or malevolent deity within various mythologies. This suggests that many evil gods, dark deities, or demon kings mentioned in mythological traditions may represent incarnations or manifestations of Satan across different realms. From the author's perspective, Figures such as Cronus, Saturn, Greek-Roman mythology, Iblis, Arab mythology, Loki and his 3 children, Norse mythology, Apep, Egyptian mythology, Gong, Chinese mythology and others are roles that Satan has played. Moreover, Satan does not appear in a single fixed form. Each culture portrays him differently, sometimes grotesque, sometimes animal-like, appearing as serpents, bulls, goats, and other forms. The Mark of Baphomet, the hidden code of Satan. In the world of occult symbols, there are images that require no explanation, yet still unsettle the human heart from the very first glance. The inverted 5-pointed star, also known as the Mark of Baphomet, belongs to this category of symbols. It has appeared quietly across many ages, crossing the boundaries of religion, culture, and language, carrying with it an ancient story of rebellion, forbidden knowledge, and ambition that seeks to transcend the heavenly order. This mark did not emerge at a single moment in history. It gradually crystallized over thousands of years from the deepest layers of esoteric thought, where humanity sought to interpret the fall of celestial beings and the organized rise of evil. According to scholarly study, the upright 5-pointed star, or upward-facing pentagram, was once regarded by ancient civilizations as a symbol of cosmic order. Its 5 points represent the 5 fundamental elements: earth, water, air, fire, and spirit, with spirit occupying the highest position, guiding and harmonizing matter. When the point of the star faces upward, it symbolizes the soul governing instinct and humanity living within an ordained order. When that star is inverted, its entire meaning reverses. 2 points rise upward, evoking the image of horns lifted toward the sky, symbolizing defiant power and ambition directed against the order of heaven. The remaining 3 points turn downward toward the earth, representing absolute focus on the material world, instinctual pleasure and tangible power. Spiritual order yields to desire and the will to dominate. Hidden within this inverted star, the face of Baphomet gradually emerges. It is the face of a goat with deep, watchful eyes that feel both alert and cold, as though they pierce through the outer shell of morality to reach the most concealed desires of the human heart. This imagery leads many esoteric scholars to draw a direct connection to the Watchers, the Guardians, once entrusted with observing and guiding humanity. In symbolic interpretation, Baphomet is viewed as an allegorical image of Azazel, the leader of the Watchers, associated with forbidden knowledge and the corruption of the pre-flood world. The image of the goat carries profound meaning in Jewish tradition, closely linked to the concept of the scapegoat. Azazel becomes the entity that receives the sins of humanity and is sent into the wilderness, bearing accumulated impurity. The Mark of Baphomet thus becomes a symbolic memory of an angel who once stood within the heavenly order, then chose a path of ruling the physical world through knowledge and power. Here, Baphomet is not merely a demon, but a symbol of a choice, placing knowledge above morality, power above obedience, and the ego above the sacred order. In the modern era, the Mark of Baphomet is used by the Church of Satan as a symbol of absolute autonomy, self-worship, and self-determination that transcends all sacred standards. This symbol represents a worldview in which humanity becomes the ultimate center of power, defining right and wrong according to personal will. This mark functions as an ideological gateway. When people embrace it, they enter a value system that glorifies instinct, power, and knowledge detached from moral responsibility. It reflects the spirit of the ancient oath on Mount Hermon, where the Watchers jointly committed to stepping outside the order entrusted to them in order to establish a kingdom of their own. And once the path of demonic rebellion is chosen, destructive consequences inevitably follow. It is essential to remember this. While Baphomet exalts the ego and autonomous power, the teachings of God place their emphasis on humility and obedience. Humanity is created in His image, not to rule by instinct, but to steward the world through moral responsibility and love. Within God's order, knowledge always walks alongside morality. Understanding never stands above reverence, and power always comes with responsibility. Adam was entrusted with caring for the Garden of Eden, not to seize it, but to preserve it. Humanity received freedom not to break order, but to willingly choose what is good. Jesus Christ further emphasized this order through a profound paradox that challenges worldly ideas of power. He taught that the greatest is the one who serves, that whoever desires to be exalted should humble himself, and that true strength resides in sacrifice rather than domination. While the mark of BAPHOMET places humanity at the absolute center, God's teaching places humanity in a living relationship with Him and with others. BAPHOMET promotes the liberation of instinct and unrestrained power, while God leads humanity toward inner freedom through moral discipline. One path awakens the desire to cross all boundaries. The other teaches recognition of boundaries in order to preserve life. One promises immediate power. The other builds enduring blessing across generations. Here humanity stands before two opposing paths. One path worships the ego, where knowledge is severed from reverence and power becomes the ultimate aim. The other path leads back to sacred order, where understanding serves morality, power serves life, and freedom is bound to responsibility before God. Whether the outcome is destruction or eternal peace with God rests in the decision and choice you make today. It is precisely because of this fundamental choice that the story of Satan does not end within the Bible or Judeo-Christian texts. That rebellious current of thought continues to leave deep marks within humanity's collective memory, reflected across mythologies from many different civilizations. In every land and every era, Satan does not always appear under the same name or form. He wears different cultural masks, yet his essence remains unchanged. Before examining specific mythological traditions to gain a broader understanding of these so-called antagonistic deities, it is important to recall the core signs by which Satan can be recognized in every form he assumes: violent cruelty, deceptive cunning, and the incitement of conflict or rebellion. These three traits can be summarized in three words: deception, evil, and strife. With this framework in mind, we now begin tracing the footprints of Satan through ancient mythologies. What follows are figures of evil found in mythological traditions, which, in the view of the author, are very likely manifestations of Satan, or at the very least, entities directly connected to him. Jinn, Iblis in Arab mythology. Within the treasury of Arab mythology and religious tradition, the story of Jinn Iblis bears striking similarities to the story of Lucifer in the Judeo-Christian tradition. For this reason, many people consider Iblis to be Lucifer as reflected through the lens of Islam. However, to understand the true nature of Iblis, it is necessary to return to a time before the rise of Islam, when stories of the Jinn were already deeply rooted in Arab folklore. In ancient Arab mythology, the Jinn are a unique class of beings who exist alongside humanity and the celestial orders. They are not angels yet. They are not purely demonic either. The Jinn were created by Allah from smokeless fire, a subtle, dynamic, and powerful form of energy, distinct from the pure light from which angels were created, and distinct from the clay from which human beings were formed. This origin grants the Jinn powers far beyond those of humans, while still giving them traits closer to humanity than to angels. They possess individuality, emotions, desires, and most importantly, free will. Within the world of the Jinn, a clear division exists between good and evil. Good Jinn are beings who revere Allah and live in accordance with moral order and cosmic law. They do not seek to dominate humanity, but instead often remain hidden occasionally, assisting humans in extraordinary circumstances. In traditional folklore, the figure of the genie in the story Aladdin and the Magic Lamp represents a form of good Jinn, one who possesses immense power, yet uses that power to help to bless and to fulfill wishes with constructive intent. By contrast, evil Jinn are those who choose the path of domination, deception, and manipulation of humanity. They employ their intelligence, supernatural abilities, and powers of transformation to spread fear, lust, and chaos. Such Jinn frequently intervene directly in the human world, inciting conflict, stirring greed, and inflaming pride. Iblis belongs to this category of evil Jinn, yet he occupies an entirely exceptional position. According to the Quran, Iblis was a jinn of very high rank, permitted to dwell among the angels because of his intelligence and his early devotion. When Allah created Adam and commanded the celestial beings to bow before humanity as a sign of respect for the order of creation, Iblis refused. This refusal did not arise from ignorance, but from conscious pride. Iblis considered himself superior to Adam because he was created from fire, while humans were created from clay. This reasoning clearly mirrors the essence of Satan in other traditions, placing oneself above divine order and using intellect to justify rebellion. From that moment onward, Iblis ceased to be merely a fallen jinn. He became the leader of temptation, the one who vowed to lead humanity away from the path of righteousness. In Islam, Iblis assumes the role of the tester of humankind, closely paralleling the image of Satan as the deceiver, instigator, and corrupter in the Bible. The key point lies here. Jinn endowed with free will possess the capacity to choose between good and evil. Iblis stands as the clearest example of a being granted power and freedom, who chose rebellion, placing the ego above the creator. For this reason, Iblis does not represent all jinn, but instead symbolizes the dark side of freedom when it becomes severed from morality and reverence for God. From this point forward, the image of Satan in Arab mythology becomes fully defined, not merely a crude demon, but a fallen intelligence, a being who understands divine order yet deliberately opposes it. The conflict began when Allah created humanity from clay and commanded both jinn and angels to bow before humankind. The angels obeyed, and most jinn raised no objection. Yet a number of jinn openly resisted the divine decree, and the leader of this defiance was Iblis. Iblis was known as a violent and cruel jinn, deeply arrogant, and because he possessed free will, he believed that obedience to Allah was not required in every circumstance. He often acted solely according to his own will. In this moment, Iblis was consumed by envy, believing that a being created from fire should never bow to humans fashioned from earth. This resentment placed him in direct opposition to Allah. Through cunning and deceit, he persuaded other jinn to join him in rebellion, igniting a great conflict in the heavens. In the end, the uprising of the violent jinn, led by Iblis, was crushed. Allah expelled them from his realm and forbade their return, likely casting them down to a lower level of existence. From that point on, Iblis became known as Shaitan Satan. Although Iblis and his followers committed grave transgressions, Allah did not annihilate them completely. Instead, he allowed them to continue existing in more debased forms and commanded them to remain until the day of final judgment. Yet Iblis did not respond to this mercy with gratitude. His hatred toward God and humanity only intensified. He devoted himself to countless schemes designed to lure humans into sin and rebellion against Allah, with the ultimate aim of dragging as many souls as possible into hell, alongside him in the age to come. From this very pattern, the image of Satan can no longer be confined to Arabian mythology or Islamic theology alone. Iblis is only a name, a cultural mask placed upon the same rebellious essence that emerged very early in the spiritual history of humanity. When we widen our perspective beyond the Middle East, it becomes increasingly clear that Satan does not exist only within the Bible or the Quran. His presence leaves deep traces in the collective memory of many different civilizations. In every land, he appears under a different name, within a different myth. Yet he always carries the same familiar pattern, a primordial, powerful being who rules through violence and fear, defies the heavenly order, and is ultimately overthrown and cast down into the abyss. This pattern becomes especially striking when we turn our gaze toward the ancient West. In Greek-Roman mythology, there exists a figure who bears all the defining marks of Satan beneath another symbolic form. A titan who ruled during the primordial age devoured his own children out of fear of losing power, plunged both heaven and earth into chaos, and was eventually punished by imprisonment in the depths of the abyss. That figure is known by two names that have been etched deeply into mythological history: Titan Cronus, Saturn in Greek-Roman mythology. As discussed in earlier sections, the image of Satan is not confined to a single religion or belief system. Across the flow of history and the collective memory of humanity, Satan appears under many different names and forms, stretching from west to east, from the Bible to ancient mythologies. Regardless of the form he takes, the core nature of Satan consistently reveals itself through three defining traits: violent cruelty, cunning, deception, and a persistent tendency to incite conflict or rebellion. Together, these three elements form a coherent pattern, expressing hostility toward the heavenly order and an ambition to draw humanity away from the moral path into an inescapable cycle of corruption. This essence may be summarized in three words: deception, evil, strife. From this perspective, the figure of the Titan Cronus, known as Saturn in Roman mythology, emerges bearing all the characteristic signs associated with Satan, not merely because of the phonetic similarity between the names Saturn and Satan, but more importantly, because Cronus fully embodies the identified pattern of deception, cruelty, and rebellion. First and foremost, Cronus represents violence and cruelty in their most extreme form. In Greek mythology, the earliest era of the cosmos was ruled by Uranus, the god of the sky, the embodiment of primordial power that encompassed all things. Uranus united with Gaia, Mother Earth. And from this union, the first generation of Titans was born, colossal beings endowed with nearly absolute strength. Yet Uranus's authority was inseparable from tyranny. He regarded his own children as potential threats to his throne, and driven by this fear, he imprisoned many of the Titans deep within the earth, causing Gaia immense suffering both physically and spiritually. From this accumulated resentment, Gaia began seeking one bold enough to challenge the reigning order. Among all the Titans, only Cronus, the youngest son, cunning and fiercely ambitious, answered his mother's call. Gaia entrusted Cronus with a sacred sickle forged from adamant, a symbol of the power to sever the old order. When Uranus descended close to the earth, Cronus ambushed him, using the sickle to castrate his own father and seize dominion over the heavens. This act marked a cataclysmic turning point in divine history. For the first time, supreme authority was taken not through rightful succession, but through violence and rebellion. The blood of Uranus fell upon the earth, giving rise to chaotic beings, signaling that the balance of the universe had been torn apart. From that moment on, Cronus became the new king of the Titans, ushering in an era of rule founded on fear and brute domination. Once enthroned, Cronus soon became haunted by a prophecy. Just as Uranus had been overthrown, he too would be replaced by one of his own children. This prophecy gnawed relentlessly at his mind, turning power into a burden and fatherhood into a perceived threat. To preserve his throne, Cronus chose a path of cold and absolute cruelty. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth, Cronus swallowed the child whole before the mother's eyes. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon vanished one by one into their father's belly, never once seeing the light of the sky. From then on, Cronus's power was sustained by blood and silence, by the extinguishing of lives before they could grow. The image of the supreme god no longer conveyed protection, but became a symbol of tyranny, where the throne was secured through the destruction of one's own lineage. When the sixth child was born, however, Rhea could no longer endure this fate. With Gaia's help, she devised a plan to save the child. Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and handed it to Cronus, while the true infant was secretly taken to the island of Crete to be raised in concealment and safety. Cronus swallowed the stone, unaware that the seed of his downfall was already growing. That child was Zeus, raised in secrecy. Zeus absorbed the power of the sky, and the suppressed will of generations cast aside. Upon reaching maturity, Zeus returned to confront Cronus, forcing him to disgorge the children he had swallowed. From this moment, a great war erupted between the Titans and the Olympian gods, bringing Cronus's reign to an end. This story is more than a myth of succession. It is a profound record of how power behaves when driven by ambition and fear. Cronus seized the throne through rebellion and maintained it through violence, only for the same pattern to return and overthrow him. This cycle appears repeatedly in traditions surrounding Satan power. Gained through rebellion always carries within it the seed of its own collapse. Second, Cronus clearly displays the trait of deception through his seductive promises. According to legend, he proclaimed the vision of a perfect golden age, a time when humanity lived in abundance, free from toil, with wealth evenly shared, and every need fulfilled. This image struck directly at humanity's deepest longing for a flawless society, free from injustice and suffering. The promise of the Golden Age became Cronus's tool for enchanting other titans and attracting widespread worship. It reflects the same pattern commonly associated with Satan in religious traditions, the promise of material paradise, immediate power and happiness without moral cost. This myth collapsed alongside Cronus's downfall when Zeus matured and led the campaign that overthrew his father, ending the era of Titan rule. After his defeat, Cronus and the Titan host were cast into Tartarus, the deepest abyss of the cosmos in Greek mythology, a prison reserved for those who rebelled against divine order. Tartarus became the ultimate symbol of punishment for beings who exceeded the bounds of power and ambition. Yet the story did not end there. The lingering echo of the Golden Age continued to haunt later generations, inspiring movements and beings who sought to free Cronus and restore the old dominion. Beneath the remnants of the fallen Titan dynasty, when Cronus had already been imprisoned deep within Tartarus and the new order of Zeus had only just been established, chaos had not vanished. It merely withdrew to a deeper layer, waiting for a new form through which to rise again. That form bore the name Typhon. In Greek mythology, Typhon was not an ordinary being, but the final embodiment of primordial fury. He was born of Gaia, the Earth Mother, out of her seething rage over the imprisonment of the Titans and the overthrow of the ancient order. Typhon possessed a colossal form unlike any creature that had ever existed. His head reached the stars, his body stretched from one horizon to the other. In place of legs were massive coils of serpents, and from his shoulders grew hundreds of dragon heads, each spewing fire, poisonous smoke, and thunderous roars that shook both sky and earth. Typhon represented more than brute physical strength. He embodied pure chaos itself, a power that rejected order, denied law, and bowed to no authority. He rose with a singular purpose to overthrow Zeus, free Cronus, and restore the dominion of the Old Age. The confrontation between Typhon and Zeus became one of the most violent battles in all of Greek mythology, fully expressing the clash between order and chaos, between legitimate authority and rebellious force. When Typhon appeared, the sky darkened. Mountains split apart, the seas surged, and the land trembled as if about to tear in two. The Olympian gods, long accustomed to the authority of Zeus, sensed a threat unlike any before. Many fled in terror, some transforming into animals, to escape, leaving Zeus to face the storm of chaos alone. Zeus entered the battle wielding the full power of thunder. Bolts of lightning struck Typhon's body, ripping apart the heavens and scorching the earth. Typhon retaliated by hurling mountains, casting torrents of fire, and using the strength of his serpent coils to bind Zeus, driving even the king of the gods into grave danger. Some versions recount that Zeus was briefly defeated, his sinews torn from him, a moment symbolizing how order itself seemed on the verge of collapse before chaos. Yet, as with every rebellious pattern that had come before, Typhon's power carried an inner imbalance. He possessed immense strength, but lacked harmony and legitimate authority. Zeus, grounded in resolve and power established upon the new order, rose again. Strengthened by the loyalty of the remaining gods, and by the will to protect the cosmos from chaos, Zeus unleashed a final thunderbolt so mighty that it shattered the very foundation of the sky. Typhon was utterly defeated. Zeus crushed him beneath Mount Etna, where fire and earthquakes were later believed to be the trapped monster's breath and final convulsions. There, Typhon was sealed deep within the earth, stripped of any capacity to challenge divine order again. Typhon's downfall marked the final end of all attempts to revive the Titan Age. Cronus remained imprisoned, the Titans stayed bound in Tartarus, and the rule of Zeus was firmly secured. This battle became a definitive affirmation that every rebellious force, no matter how violent, ultimately yields to an order established by legitimate divine power. Here, the cost of choosing between good and evil appears with striking clarity. Typhon was not merely a monster of myth, but a reflection of the same current of thought that had once manifested through Lucifer, through the Watchers, through Cronus, and continued to reappear in many forms across history. Though defeated and confined, that spirit of chaos and domination continually seeks new vessels through which to rise again. Through the figures of Cronus, Saturn, and the battle with Typhon, Greek-Roman mythology preserves more than ancient stories of gods. It safeguards a profound lesson about rebellion against sacred order, about cycles of uprising repeated across ages, and about the inevitable outcome when power rooted in chaos confronts the justice of heaven. It becomes clear that behind Cronus, behind Typhon, there are not merely isolated figures of mythology, but the mark of Satan continuing to move across civilizations. Satan is not confined to a single form. He changes names, adopts different symbols, yet his essence remains the same: the incitement of violence, the cultivation of dominion-driven ambition, and the demand for offerings sealed in blood. When we move beyond the Greek-Roman world, the traces of Satan emerge with even greater clarity in the biblical texts, appearing in a more direct and more terrifying form. A god bound to fire, the sacrifice of children, and the collective terror of the ancient world. That figure bears the name Moloch, the bull-headed god of the Bible. The bull-headed god Moloch, also known by names such as Molech, Milcom, Malcolm, and others, is a demonic deity mentioned directly in the Bible, closely associated with some of the most barbaric and haunting forms of worship in ancient religious history. This deity was once revered by the Canaanites and by segments of the kingdom of Judah as a king, a being believed to possess the power to control harvests, weather, and the collective destiny of the community. According to ancient records, statues of Moloch were cast in metal, shaped with a human body and the head of a bull. The interior of the statue was hollow, with a large cavity in the abdomen and both arms extended forward. This structure was not merely symbolic. It was deliberately designed to serve the ritual practice of fire sacrifice. Worship of Moloch was often accompanied by various forms of debased sexual rites. Yet the most horrifying aspect was the sacrifice of newborn children, referred to in Scripture as passing children through the fire. In these rituals, intense fire was lit inside the statue, causing heat to radiate outward until the metal arms glowed red. Infants were then placed upon those burning arms, or in some cases thrown directly into the fiery cavity within, with the belief that their lives were being offered to Moloch through fire. To drown out the agonized screams of the children and the cries of their parents, priests, and participants would blow horns and beat drums, creating a continuous chaotic noise. Some traditions record that parents of the sacrificed children were forbidden to weep, for any display of grief was believed to invite punishment from Moloch upon the entire community. Those who worshipped Moloch believed that sacrificing newborns would bring abundant harvests, favorable weather, and prosperity for the year ahead. Because of this blind belief, in certain periods, hundreds of innocent children were killed during a single festival season. This reveals Moloch as a bloodthirsty demonic deity sustaining power through human life itself. From a moral and religious standpoint, it can be stated with certainty that any form of worship involving the sacrifice of human life does not originate from the true God. Such practices reflect the work of demonic forces or evil spirits that severely corrupt humanity's moral foundation, driving people to destroy one another and sink deeper into sin. Authentic religions, both Eastern and Western, guide humanity toward goodness and consistently affirm that taking life is a grave sin. Killing in order to offer sacrifices to God represents an even heavier moral transgression. This same principle appears clearly in traditional Eastern literature. In classic works such as Journey to the West, only demons and monsters, masquerading as divine beings, demand human sacrifice. Their true aim is to steal the lives of others, to prolong their own existence. Figures such as the spirit-sensing king of the Tongtayan River, who demanded a pair of young boys and girls each year to extend his life, or the demon minister who plotted for the king of the Bhikshu kingdom to eat children's hearts as medicine, all belong to the same profoundly evil pattern: killing others to borrow life. In complete contrast, true divine and enlightened beings in authentic religions always lead humanity toward higher moral ideals. Buddhism teaches compassion. Christianity teaches charity and love. Laozi left the Tao Te Ching, and Confucius taught benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. These teachings do not demand material offerings from people, nor do they arbitrarily dispense blessings. All fortune and misfortune arise from one's own moral choices. It is inconceivable that the true God would accept offerings as wicked as the sacrifice of infants in exchange for harvests or favorable weather. Moloch, however, demanded exactly such things because his true nature was demonic. He was an evil spirit, a devil, and in essence, Satan appearing under another form. A particularly striking detail is that worship of Moloch was not confined to Canaan alone. In ancient North Africa, similar rituals were performed in devotion to a bull-headed deity called Cronus. Worshippers believed this figure to be the same as the Titan Cronus from Greek mythology, and they justified child sacrifice by invoking the myth of Cronus devouring his own children in order to preserve his power. Thus, Moloch fully embodies the defining traits of Satan: profound evil expressed through a thirst for the blood of children, and deception expressed through promises of abundant harvests and favorable weather, while in reality dragging humanity into an abyss of sin. Although Moloch may not appear to openly incite rebellion or warfare on a spiritual level, he represents a rebellious anti-God force. Everything he demands directly contradicts God's will, and worshiping Moloch constitutes an act of being led away from God. For this reason, Moses, the prophet who led the Israelites out of Egypt in search of the Promised Land, repeatedly warned the people not to worship bull images or call them God. He emphasized clearly that such images were not the true God. Before the time of Moses, the Israelites themselves had been influenced by the custom of worshiping a golden calf, calling it the wise God, the eternal source of wisdom. This was precisely one of the schemes used by Moloch and other demonic forces to lure people into sin and rebellion against God. The Old Testament speaks about this with absolute clarity. In Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21, it says, "You shall not give any of your children to be offered to Moloch. By doing so, you would profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." And in Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 35, it further records, "They built the high places of Baal in the valley of the son of Hinnom to cause their sons and daughters to pass through the fire to Molech, something I did not command. Nor did it enter my mind that they should do this abomination and cause Judah to sin." From these passages, it becomes unmistakably clear that the worship of Moloch and the act of passing children through fire are condemned in Scripture as abominations that profane the name of God. Such practices are explicitly forbidden by God. Anyone who engages in them turns away from divine instruction and places themselves willingly on a path of sin. It is important to recognize that the pattern represented by Moloch has never disappeared. It continues to exist, only changing its form to fit the modern age. Today, people no longer publicly place infants on burning altars. Yet humanity still accepts the exchange of life dignity and the future of the most vulnerable for power, profit, convenience, and a false sense of stability. When human lives are treated as necessary costs, when children are reduced to statistics in cold calculations, when moral principles are pushed aside in the name of the greater good, the spirit of Moloch remains active, even though it no longer wears the face of a bull. The Moloch of the ancient world demanded blood and the bodies of the unfortunate. The Moloch of the modern world demands silence, compromise, and gradual acceptance of what is wrong and evil. Tragically, more and more people fall under the influence of this modern Moloch without realizing it. As a result, moral awareness erodes, and the sacrifice of the weak becomes something society begins to tolerate. This is where the pattern of Satan reveals itself most clearly. Satan rarely appears as a terrifying demon. Most of the time, he appears as ideas that sound reasonable, as choices labeled practical, as shortcuts that promise safety, prosperity, or control, while quietly demanding the surrender of conscience. For this reason, the issue today is not whether people kneel before a physical idol with the head of a bull. The real question is this: what are people willing to sacrifice, and to whom, when power is placed above life? When success is built on the harm of others, when people bow to systems that require them to abandon moral responsibility. The altar of Moloch still exists, even though it is no longer visible to the human eye. And it is precisely here that the dividing line becomes unmistakably clear. One path leads humanity back to the order of God, where life is honored and morality holds a central place. The other path continues to repeat the pattern of Satan gaining power by trading away what is most sacred. And the choice you make today will shape your future and determine your final outcome. For that reason, consider carefully. But the story does not end with Moloch. If Moloch represents a kind of dark deity that demands blood, demands sacrifice, and requires human submission in order to maintain power, then in another ancient civilization, Satan appears in a very different form, more primal, more exposed, and far more terrifying. There he needs no temple, no elaborate rituals, no daily praise or invocation from human beings. He exists simply as a force that stands in direct opposition to the order of heaven. The ancient Egyptians called this force by a name that is short yet deeply haunting: Apep. Apep was not a god meant to be worshipped, nor a king who granted blessings as Moloch was believed to do. In the understanding of the ancient Egyptians, Apep was the embodiment of pure chaos, an unending darkness, a force of destruction that always lurked behind the fragile structure of order. The serpent Apep, the manifestation of Satan in Egyptian mythology. When people think of the image of the serpent in spiritual traditions, the first memory that often comes to mind is the Garden of Eden. In the beginning, Adam and Eve lived in peace within the garden God had given them. Every need for food was fully provided. Whatever they desired, God granted it to them. Birds with brilliant colors drifted lightly from flower to flower, from branch to branch, singing clear and gentle songs that seemed to rise toward the heavens. Rivers murmured softly as they flowed through the land, watering the soil so that plants grew easily in rich, fertile ground, where no weeds or thorns existed. Adam's task was simple and light, tending the garden because God did not want him to labor heavily throughout the day. Throughout the garden stood countless trees that remained green and flourishing all year long, especially beautiful when fresh shoots and bright leaves covered their branches. The fruit was abundant and sweet. At the center of the Garden of Eden stood the tree of life, which was also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. At that time, Adam and Eve had no awareness of evil at all. Their world was entirely good. Within it, they lived freely and peacefully, without fear, like birds in the open sky or animals playing across the fields. God often walked through the garden and spoke with them in the gentle hours of the evening. Their happiness was therefore complete. God asked only one thing of them and invited them to obey it. He said to Adam, "You are free to eat from every tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. On the day you eat from it, you will surely die." Adam willingly accepted this command. There was no need to eat from that tree, since so many others surrounded them. Even though he did not yet understand what death was, Adam knew that he must love and obey God, the one who had created him. For the woman taking fruit from that single tree was never necessary. But the serpent was more cunning than any other wild creature, and also among the most beautiful. It understood that if it could make that fruit appear more desirable than anything else, especially because it was forbidden, temptation would arise. So it approached Eve in its most alluring form, appearing before her, tall and radiant, clothed in shimmering scales. The serpent began with a crafty question. "Did God really say that you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve replied, "We may eat from all the trees in the garden except one. As for the tree in the middle of the garden, God has said that we must not eat from it or even touch it, or else we will surely die." Then the serpent said, "You will not die." God said that so you would be afraid and not eat the fruit, because he knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will become wise like divine beings, knowing both good and evil. Eve looked again at the tree. It was beautiful to the eye, and its fruit looked delicious. The thought that it could bring wisdom made it extremely desirable. She did not realize that she was being subtly guided by the serpent's cunning deception. Eve reached out her hand, picked the fruit, and tasted it. She began to eat. The serpent quietly withdrew, leaving her alone with her choice. Eve had shared every part of life with her husband, and now she shared this new experience as well. The fruit tasted sweet, and Adam also ate. Eve offered it to her husband, and Adam ate the fruit as well. They did not die immediately. Yet through this act of disobedience, they surrendered eternal life. Just as the serpent had said, their eyes were opened, and for the first time, they became aware of things they had never known before. They realized they were naked, and for the first time, they felt shame. They knew they had done wrong, and in fear they hid themselves among the dense bushes. Then they heard the sound of God's footsteps as he walked through the garden in the cool of the evening breeze. Adam and Eve retreated deeper into the foliage to avoid his presence. "Adam, where are you?" God called. Adam answered, "My Lord. I heard your footsteps in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself." God asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam replied, "The woman you placed beside me gave me the fruit, and I ate it." God then turned to Eve and asked with compassion, "Why did you do this?" Eve answered, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." Adam and Eve had sinned through disobedience. God asked only for obedience, and they failed to keep it. The serpent also sinned by deceiving Eve, and the first judgment spoken by God was directed toward it. God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed above all animals. From now on, you will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. There will be hostility between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers." From that moment on, the serpent no longer stood upright and proud. It lay close to the ground, lower than all other creatures, and slithered through the dust forever. From that moment, the image of the serpent ceased to be merely a creature in the Garden of Eden. It became a symbol of a force opposed to the order of heaven, a mind that observes weights and knows how to strike at the deepest weaknesses of the human heart. That serpent did not rely on physical power. It needed only carefully chosen words to draw humanity away from God's protection. Time passed. Civilizations rose and fell. The Garden of Eden became a sacred memory preserved in Scripture. Yet the image of the serpent never faded. It continued to appear, no longer tied to a single individual, but taking on a broader, more ancient form, standing in more direct opposition to heaven itself. Thousands of years later, in a completely different civilization, the image of the serpent appeared again. Not standing in a garden, but coiled within the darkness of the cosmos, confronting the divine order night after night. The ancient Egyptians called it by a name that still sends a chill through history: Apep. This is a colossal serpent-shaped monster in Egyptian mythology, believed to have existed since primordial times. It represents the most extreme form of evil, absolute chaos, and everlasting darkness. Apep dwells in Duat, the Egyptian underworld, and embodies total evil. Unlike fierce gods such as Sobek or Seth, who despite their violent aspects still possess certain constructive qualities, Apep contains no redeeming traits whatsoever. It stands in direct opposition to the sun god Ra, and constantly seeks to wrap the entire world in its enormous body, plunging creation into the eternal darkness it rules. The ancient Egyptians loathed Apep and referred to it with names such as the abominable reptile, the world-encircling one, and the enemy of Ra. In Egyptian mythology, Ra is the sun god, one of the most revered deities in the Egyptian pantheon. Each day, Ra travels across the sky in his solar bark, accompanied by attendant gods, bringing light and order to the world. The greatest obstacle to Ra's journey is Apep. This massive serpent continually seeks to defeat Ra, destroy his solar boat, and cast the world into endless night. Permanent chaos and the collapse of the cosmic order, established by the primeval gods. Apep possesses the ability to enchant and overpower other gods, rendering them unable to resist and forcing them into submission. Because of this, Ra at times faces great danger during his nightly journey. There are even accounts in which Apep swallows Ra whole, causing the world to lose its light. The ancient Egyptians believed that solar eclipses occurred when this happened. Yet in the end, Ra always prevails. Even when swallowed, he escapes by cutting his way out through Apep's body. Ra defeats Apep in many different ways by splitting it in two, piercing it with a spear, or carving an opening from within its belly. However, Apep never truly dies. Each night the monstrous serpent is reborn. The following day, it rises again to disrupt Ra's journey, or to deceive and corrupt his divine companions. This cycle repeats endlessly, continuing until the final judgment. We know that the serpent is one of Satan's most frequently used symbols. The serpent that tempted Eve and threw her Adam to eat the forbidden fruit, leading to their expulsion from the Garden of Eden, is understood as a manifestation of Satan sent to draw humanity into sin, although it cannot be stated with absolute certainty. Apep may also represent a transformed manifestation or incarnation of Satan after being cast down into the realm of the Egyptian gods. Apep displays all the defining characteristics of Satan. It is the most evil being in Egyptian mythology, possesses the power to deceive and enchant even the gods, and directly opposes divine authority, seeking to drown all existence in chaos and permanently erase order. One final detail is especially striking. Apep never abandons its rebellion. It continues its resistance until the very end of the world, closely mirroring the vow of vengeance against God and humanity found in the traditions of Lucifer and Iblis. And when looking at Apep, people begin to uncover a terrifying truth. No matter how many times he is defeated, Satan never gives up. Because intense jealousy continually burns within him, he deliberately spreads fear and dark schemes across the world, moving through different civilizations and appearing in many different forms. And when the justice of the god Ra succeeded in preserving Egypt far to the north in distant lands of ice storms and thunder, the sinister plots of evil rose once again. This time, it was no longer a colossal serpent coiling around the sun. Instead, it took the form of a cunning intelligence, one that could laugh, speak, form alliances with the gods, and quietly prepare for the collapse of the world. The Norse people called this being Loki, and he did not act alone. From Loki came forth the three most terrifying beings in Norse mythology. Three children who carried the same blood of chaos, each destined to play a crucial role in the final catastrophe known as Ragnarok. Loki and his three children in Norse mythology. Beneath the cold skies of the far north, where ice thunder and songs of battle intertwined, the Norse people told stories of gods who carried not only radiance, but also darkness within themselves. Among them, one name always made the gods wary and left humans both curious and uneasy. That name was Loki. The cunning god Loki and his three children are often regarded as the clearest candidates for traces of Satan within Norse mythology. Many people are familiar with Loki as a mere trickster god, someone who delights in pranks and mischief. Yet when the full scope of his story is examined, it quickly becomes evident that Loki's actions went far beyond harmless trickery. His deeds crossed into the realm of betrayal, manipulation, and deliberate destruction. Loki appears in myth with an unusually complex origin. He is neither a pure-blooded Aesir god nor fully aligned with the giant race of the Jotun. Loki stands between worlds, endowed with sharp intellect, persuasive speech, and unpredictable powers of transformation. At the beginning, Loki became a sworn brother to Odin the All-Father, sharing oaths and accompanying the gods on many of their adventures. Yet Loki never truly stood firmly on the side of the gods. He did not openly oppose them at first either. Instead, Loki maintained an ambiguous position, sometimes aiding the gods, sometimes placing them in grave danger, and then reappearing as a rescuer at the final moment. This constant shifting of loyalties made Loki profoundly unpredictable and revealed his fundamentally cunning, calculating nature and his desire to manipulate events to his own advantage. From Loki came forth the three most terrifying beings in Norse mythology. These were not ordinary children, but monstrous entities, each carrying within them a fragment of primordial chaos. The first was Fenrir, a colossal wolf whose strength grew without limit to the point that even the gods trembled before him. The second was Jormungandr, the immense world serpent cast into the ocean so vast that his body encircled the entire world. The third was Hel the sorceress, who ruled the realm of the dead, half living and half decayed sovereign over those souls denied entrance to Valhalla. These three beings repeatedly posed grave threats to the order of the Aesir gods. Odin, with his wisdom and prophetic sight, foresaw a dreadful future in which all three children of Loki would play decisive roles in the final destruction of the world, Ragnarok, also known as the Twilight of the Gods. On that day, Fenrir, Jormungandr, and Hel would become the most dangerous enemies of the gods, pushing the entire cosmos toward annihilation. Yet because this catastrophe was woven into fate itself, the gods were not permitted to kill them outright. They could only restrain their destructive power for a time. Binding Fenrir with the enchanted chain, Gleipnir casting Jormungandr into the depths of the sea surrounding Midgard and banishing Hel to rule the underworld of Niflheim. Loki was also the indirect instigator behind the death of Balder, the god of goodness and purity. Loki deceived the blind god Hod, tricking him into killing Balder with a mistletoe branch by claiming that the branch was incapable of harming him. The death of Balder was far from a simple prank. Loki planned it carefully and even secretly conspired with Hel to imprison Balder's soul permanently in the underworld, preventing the Aesir gods from restoring him to life. Because Balder embodied goodness itself, his death marked a profound shift. With Balder gone, humanity gradually grew darker, and even the gods lost their moral purity, resorting instead to cunning and deceit in their struggles against the giants. Loki's true aim became clear: the destruction of goodness itself. For this crime, the gods punished Loki by binding him and placing a serpent above his head, whose dripping venom caused him unbearable agony whenever it fell upon him. Even so, Loki swore vengeance. He proclaimed that when Ragnarok began, he would return to take revenge on the gods, letting Fenrir devour Odin, casting the stars from the sky and unleashing Jormungandr to coil around the world. When Ragnarok finally unfolds, Loki breaks free and leads the monsters into battle aboard a ship forged by Hel from the fingernails and toenails of the dead. He attacks the gods, plunging all 9 worlds into fire and blood. The evil deceit and rebellious nature of Satan are fully revealed through Loki. Moreover, the image of Jormungandr encircling the world during Ragnarok closely resembles the Serpent Apep from Egyptian mythology discussed earlier. At the same time, Fenrir is said to swallow the stars or hurl them from the heavens. Across both Eastern and Western traditions, stars often symbolize divine beings. In the West, Jupiter represents Zeus, and the constellations of the zodiac correspond to gods of Greek mythology. In the East, such symbolism is even more abundant, with figures like the Star of Metal Venus, the Fire Virtue Star, the Cowherd and Weaver Girl, and many others. If the stars fall to the earth, does this not suggest that many gods themselves fall from grace? When a star falls, it is not merely the collapse of light in the sky, but the breaking of the moral order, the responsibility, and the sacred mission that the being once carried. Across many cultures, stars represent order, guidance, and the living connection between heaven and the human world. They hold their appointed places, move along paths that have been set for them, and in doing so reflect the harmony of the entire cosmos. When stars are cast down, that order begins to tremble. Those that once stood as guides fall from their heights, and from that fall disorder spreads through every realm. This imagery aligns closely with the belief that Satan was able to deceive 1/3 of the heavenly beings into rebellion. The Book of Revelation also speaks of the red dragon, an embodiment of Satan, whose tail swept 1/3 of the stars from the sky and cast them down to the earth. And this is precisely a warning about seduction, temptation, and widespread collapse within the spiritual realm. Through Loki, through Fenrir, through Jormungandr, and through the image of falling stars, ancient civilizations seem to preserve the same shared truth. The downfall of the world begins when morality decays among human beings, and even among the gods themselves. This in turn stands as a reminder for humanity to live with faithfulness, humility, and responsibility. Only in this way can human beings remain under the protection and care of the divine. And when the stories of falling stars, shattered order, and rebellion against the will of heaven are placed side by side, it becomes clear that this is not a memory belonging to just one civilization. The same pattern continues to appear in the East within the ancient legends of China, where people also remembered a being of immense power, overwhelming pride, and a rage capable of shaking both heaven and earth. Gong in Chinese mythology. In the treasury of ancient Chinese mythology, Gong, also known as Gong, appears as a water deity of immense power, and at the same time as a malevolent god who spreads calamity, bloodshed, and chaos. He is depicted with a human head and a serpent's body, wild hair and beard blazing red, riding upon a black dragon, an embodiment of raging waters and an insatiable desire for power. In the beginning, Gong held the position of water god in the heavenly court, commanding water and the great currents. When the order of heaven was established under the guidance of Nuwa and the righteous gods, discontent began to grow within him. His ambition turned towards seizing supreme authority, and from that desire arose open rebellion against the heavenly realm. That uprising was swiftly crushed by Zhurong, the fire god, who embodied order and discipline. Defeated, Gong fell to the mortal world, carrying with him a fury that never faded. Among humankind, Gong continued to plunge the world into turmoil through warfare and dark sorcery. He confronted the sage rulers of antiquity, the Yellow Emperor and Zhuan Shu, figures who stood for righteousness and cosmic order. To expand his power, Gong approached Qiu, the chieftain of the Zhuli tribe, binding forces through seductive words and occult arts. Under Gong's direction, numerous evil spirits and demonic beings were summoned, all driven by the ambition to overthrow the Yellow Emperor and Zhuan Shu and seize dominion over the world. Facing this threat, the Yellow Emperor received direct aid from Nuwa and the righteous gods. The decisive battle unfolded with ferocity. The evil forces were swept away. Qiu was captured and executed, and Gong suffered a crushing defeat, his resentment igniting to an extreme. Consumed by rage, Gong smashed his head against Mount Buzhou, one of the pillars supporting the sky. That act caused the mountain to collapse and triggered immense changes in the structure of the world. The text Zhongshu Zhenjing Tangwen records this event with solemn gravity when Gong contended for power with Zhuan Shu and struck Mount Buzhou. The pillar of heaven broke, and the bonds of earth were severed. As a result, the sky tilted toward the northwest, and the land sank toward the southeast. From then on, the sun, the moon, and the stars moved along that slant, and all rivers flowed southeastward. This account shows that Gong's rebellion left a profound imprint on the very framework of the world. Assessing Gong, the Book of Documents. Canon of Yao records. King Yao's judgment. Gong's words sounded agreeable, yet his actions went astray. His outward humility concealed deep arrogance. This observation exposes his deceptive nature, a figure who hid a desire to challenge heaven and earth behind a gentle exterior. During the reign of Emperor Shun Gong once again stirred chaos by unleashing a vast flood that submerged fields and living beings. It was within this crisis that the legend of Yu the Great, controlling the floods, arose. Yu led humanity in taming the waters, defeated Gong's forces, and drove him away from the center of the world. These repeated defeats plunged Gong into extreme fury. He swore vengeance against the gods and against humanity, whom the gods had created. According to the classic of mountains and seas, Gong possessed a terrifying ally named Xiangliu. Xiangliu was a monstrous nine-headed serpent, driven by boundless greed. Wherever it passed, the ground sank into marshes, the waters turned sour, and fertile land became wasteland. During his campaign to control the floods, Yu the Great defeated Gong and slew Xiangliu. The monster's blood rendered the soil barren, leaving behind a chilling testament to the destructive power of a many-headed serpent. This image resonates strongly with other traditions, the Hydra of Greek mythology, Yamata no Orochi of Japanese legend, and the Naga of Indian mythology. All appear as multi-headed serpents that devour humans, spew deadly poison, and devastate land and harvests, becoming symbols of the ultimate threat to human order. Throughout this entire narrative, Gong embodies the three defining traits of falsehood, evil, and rebellion. He uses deceptive words to ensnare others, spreads disaster and violence, incites war, and rises in revolt against heaven. This figure clearly reflects a trace of Satan preserved in the East since primordial times. It reveals that the reach of Satan extends far beyond religious or geographic boundaries. He appears as the dark ruler of evil, throughout human history, manipulating and destroying in both East and West under different names and forms, yet always following the same pattern of rebellion against the sacred order. It can be seen that the evil gods and malevolent deities described above, although different in appearance and differing in their individual stories, all share the same core traits of Satan, deception, cruelty, and rebellion. Each of them stands in opposition to the righteous gods and seeks to lure humanity, or even other divine beings, into joining them in revolt. Even though God and the sovereign deities granted them opportunities, time and again they responded not with gratitude, but with increasing arrogance and deeper hatred toward the divine. They chose to persist in opposition to God all the way to the end of the world. What they truly desire is to draw humanity to their side, placing human beings in direct opposition to God in the ultimate battle between good and evil at the final stage of human history. In truth, Satan is not powerful at all. Although he presents himself to humanity as vast and terrifying, and may offer those who follow him small temporary benefits, such as money or fleeting fame, it must be clearly understood that he remains only a demon king within the three realms. Compared with the gods beyond the three realms, or with the supreme deities of the Orthodox faiths, he is utterly insignificant. Satan and his demonic host will ultimately be cast by God into the bottomless abyss on the day of judgment after their countless crimes against both God and humanity. Even so, in their final struggle, they will do everything they can to drag as many people as possible down into the bottomless abyss with them. This is Satan's true scheme. If human beings wish to escape Satan and receive God's protection, the first step is to face the true nature of evil directly without being deceived by sweet promises or counterfeit displays of power. When people turn away from the pattern of deception, cruelty, and rebellion, when they step back from lies, violence, and defiance of divine order, the only path that remains is a return to the traditional moral principles that God bestowed upon humanity. Morality is not an abstract concept or a rigid set of doctrines. Morality is the foundation that enables people to discern right from wrong, to preserve their conscience amid temptation, and to stand firm against forces that seek to pull humanity away from sacred order. When morality is present, Satan has no power to manipulate. When morality collapses, human beings themselves open the door for evil to enter. For this reason, morality is not merely a path of self-cultivation. It is the key that preserves human life, safeguarding both individuals and the world itself. It is the bond that connects humanity to heaven, the final boundary that protects human beings from corruption and destruction. So what exactly do the traditional moral principles that God granted to humanity consist of? And why do they possess such profound power? Let us continue to explore this together. What is divinely transmitted culture? How do Eastern and Western cultures differ? From the most ancient times, humanity has believed that the universe did not arise by chance. The people of antiquity understood that the Tao, the Way, gave birth to heaven and earth, that the Tao generated all things, and that the Tao is the ultimate source of every cause in the world. The Tao is not only the law governing the movement of the cosmos, but also the moral order that shapes human life. Traditional culture is therefore regarded as culture transmitted to humanity by the divine. It is the crystallization of the Tao and takes the Tao as its root. The sages and worthies of antiquity descended into the world bearing the mandate of heaven, carrying the mission of enlightening humanity and guiding society along a path that values virtue, accords with heaven, and lives in harmony with the universe. In practical life, divinely transmitted culture does not exist as an abstract ideology. It appears concretely in faith moral standards, ritual propriety customs, daily conduct, interpersonal relations, as well as in art, music, architecture, and social law. This is why ancient civilizations closely bound human life to heaven, to the divine, and to moral principle. In the East, the expression of the Tao is deeply rooted in the system of the three teachings Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Although these three traditions differ in their modes of expression, they all guide people toward moral cultivation, inner self-regulation, and living in accordance with heavenly principle. This spiritual foundation nourished East Asian societies for thousands of years. If the East understands the Tao as the comprehensive law that generates and nurtures all things, then in the ancient West, humanity approached the same truth through the language of covenant sacred law and a direct relationship between God and humankind. In the Western tradition, especially in the Bible, the universe is created not through chance or chaos, but through the orderly will of God. God brings heaven and earth into being, through the Word establishes light, time, and life, and places humanity at the center of creation with a clear mission to steward the world with moral responsibility. Western divinely transmitted culture therefore revolves around the concept of covenant. God grants laws and moral standards, and humanity responds with obedience, faithfulness, and reverent awe. The Ten Commandments are not merely religious rules. They form the moral foundation of society, governing how people relate to God, to others, and to their own conscience. If Eastern culture emphasizes harmony among heaven, earth, and humanity, Western culture emphasizes the living relationship between the Creator and creation. The expressions differ, yet both converge on one core truth: morality is the axis upon which world order turns. In ancient Western societies, the imprint of divinely transmitted culture is evident in law, architecture, art, and even science. Churches stand as spiritual centers of communities. Laws are grounded in the concept of divine justice. Medieval and Renaissance art seeks not only technical mastery, but the exaltation of holiness, sacrifice, and human dignity. Notably, whether East or West, divinely transmitted culture remains inseparable from real life. It speaks not only of heaven, but teaches humanity how to live on earth. It points upward while laying a firm foundation for families, communities, and nations. For this reason, when we look deeply into both Eastern and Western traditions, it becomes clear that divinely transmitted culture is not the product of a single people or religion. It is humanity's shared memory of a time when people lived closer to heaven, held reverence for the sacred, and regarded morality as the highest standard of existence. To begin, let us clarify the origins and source of divinely transmitted culture in the East. The concept of culture appears very early in classical Chinese texts. The Book of Changes states, "By observing celestial patterns, one discerns the changes of time. By attending to human culture, one transforms and enlightens the world." This statement contains a key idea. Humanity observes the laws of heaven to understand the times, and then establishes moral standards for society based on those laws. In traditional thought, heaven, earth, and humanity are called the three powers. They form a complete cosmic order. Celestial patterns do not refer merely to stars and sky, but to manifestations of heavenly intent. Earthly patterns concern the movement of land, rivers, mountains, and climate. Human culture refers to moral rules, behavior, and social organization. When these three are in harmony, society remains stable and people live in peace. The Huangdi Neijing opens with a profound insight. To observe the Tao of heaven and grasp its operation is to reach the utmost goodness and perfection. Ancient people believed that when human conduct accords with celestial patterns, social morality naturally stabilizes and life reaches its finest state. In Shuowen Jiezi, the character Wen culture is explained as the manifestation of the Tao, while Hua transformation means to teach people to practice. Culture thus refers to the process by which humanity learns from the signs revealed by heaven and applies them to daily life, adjusting behavior, character, and society. Chinese history records many figures regarded as bridges between heaven and humanity. Fuxi elucidated the 8 trigrams opening understanding of yin-yang and cosmic law. Shennong tasted hundreds of herbs, laying the foundation for medicine and human survival. Yao Shun and Yu governed through virtue, using morality as the basis for stabilizing the realm. King Wen perceived celestial signs and left insights into foresight and governance. The Book of Changes emerged as a spiritual map, helping humanity understand the transformations of heaven, earth, and human life. Laozi left the Tao Te Ching teaching naturalness, humility, and non-coercive action. Confucius inherited and systematized principles of governance through benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trustworthiness. Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment and transmitted the Dharma, revealing a path to liberation from suffering through inner cultivation and compassion. Together, these traditions formed a resilient moral system that sustained social stability and moral aspiration over long periods. From this, the core of divinely transmitted culture becomes clear morality. Taoism emphasizes authenticity. Buddhism upholds goodness and compassion. Confucianism centers on benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. These values shape communal character, cultivate reverence for heaven and the divine, honor ritual and moral duty, encourage gratitude, and uphold integrity. The 24 histories are not merely chronicles, but living repositories of moral example. Across dynasties, figures who embodied the principle that wealth cannot corrupt poverty, cannot bend, and power cannot subdue, are recorded to remind later generations that character stands above authority and profit. In daily life, traditional morality teaches moderation, self-reflection before blaming others, and the placing of human bonds above immediate gain. In art, literature, music, calligraphy, and painting, morality becomes the soul-giving works, enduring depth and vitality. When society places morality at its foundation, people live with calm balance, fewer conflicts, and greater tolerance. In times of turmoil, moral faith creates an inner Pure Land, allowing individuals to remain steady and not be swept away by external chaos. Morality also serves as an invisible boundary. When faced with choices between profit and conscience, this boundary helps people pause at the right moment, preserve their true self, and maintain direction in life. Through this, hope endures even in the most difficult times. Traditional culture also demonstrates remarkable vitality through its capacity for integration. Ideas such as harmony without uniformity and seeking common ground, while preserving differences, allow diverse systems to coexist without mutual destruction. Taoism speaks of non-coercive action, Confucianism of benevolence and righteousness, Buddhism of compassion. Together, they complement one another in the refinement of the human being. The spirit of deep virtue bearing all things permeates daily life, encouraging tolerance and humility. Laozi taught that what is soft can overcome what is hard, conveying that true strength arises from moral inner power rather than force. The flourishing Tang dynasty stands as a vivid example. Society was open, governance was upright, the economy thrived, and culture and art shone brilliantly. Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism all reached great heights, establishing high moral standards and exerting profound influence on neighboring nations. This stands as clear evidence of the real transformative power of divinely transmitted culture when morality occupies the central place. At the deepest level, the true meaning of divinely transmitted culture is organized around a single, enduring axis: the living relationship between heaven and humanity. The ancients called this principle the unity of heaven and humanity. This is not merely a philosophical concept. It is the spiritual foundation that shapes how human beings perceive the universe, construct moral order, define the meaning of life, and even sense beauty itself. In the Book of Changes, I Ching, the universe is described as being composed of heaven, earth, and humanity, known collectively as the three powers. Heaven operates through cosmic law. Earth nurtures and sustains all living things. Humanity receives these influences, responds to them, and ultimately perfects this relationship through moral cultivation. The Book of Changes teaches that growth and transformation are the visible expressions of the Tao, and that the greatest virtue of heaven and earth lies in giving life. Human beings are therefore called to inherit the goodness of heaven and earth, to extend and protect life through upright conduct, and to ultimately reach a state of moral harmony between heaven and humanity. From this perspective, traditional culture arises upon the foundation of reverence for the mandate of heaven. The ancients believed that heaven not only created humanity and all things, but also bestowed upon human beings an innate moral nature and guiding principles. Heaven and humanity resonate with one another, like form and shadow, like echo and source. When human beings live in accordance with the Tao, heaven responds with blessings. When human beings depart from the Tao, the order of the world begins to tremble. Confucius, reflecting upon the course of a human life, described moral maturation as a gradual approach toward understanding the mandate of heaven. Mencius emphasized that preserving a pure original heart and nurturing one's heaven-endowed nature constitutes true service to heaven. Within both Buddhist and Taoist traditions, this vision expands through belief in karmic causality cycles of rebirth, and the correspondence between good and evil, and the consequences that follow human action. For this reason, ritual sacrifice and ceremonial reverence held immense importance in ancient societies. Worship of heaven and respect for the divine carried not only ritual meaning, but also served as a moral reminder. The ancients understood that doing good is a human duty, not a means to bargain for blessings. When the heart seeks no reward and harbors no expectation, and instead follows heaven with sincerity, that sincerity alone truly moves the will of heaven. From the bond between heaven and humanity, traditional culture further developed another vital principle of life, the way of the mean and the wisdom of harmonious balance. The doctrine of the mean teaches that balance is the great root of the world, and harmony is the universal path through which all things flourish. When balance and harmony are maintained, heaven and earth remain properly aligned, and all beings grow in their proper place. Confucius clearly distinguished the noble person from the petty person through their attitude toward moderation. The noble person acts appropriately at all times, neither excessive nor deficient. The petty person follows desire, indulges in extremes, and acts without restraint. Juicy explained that balance means alignment with the correct way, while harmony signifies enduring stability in life. Rites and music were established by ancient sage kings to regulate human behavior and cultivate lasting social harmony. From this emerged the ideal that harmony is the highest value achieved through benevolent governance and moral self-cultivation, rather than coercive force. When distant peoples remained unconvinced, the proper response was to refine one's own virtue, not impose authority through violence. This philosophy extended naturally to the relationship between individuals and society. Xunzi described this as the way of community, emphasizing that social order arises through role differentiation, moral obligation, and mutual care. Confucian ethics employs benevolence, propriety, righteousness, trustworthiness, and integrity as guiding standards. Urging people to consider others before themselves, place righteousness above profit, and treat trust as the foundation of social standing. From this cosmology and moral vision, traditional values and perspectives on life gradually formed. The Book of Poetry teaches that heaven gives birth to humanity, provides guiding norms, and that those who follow the constant way naturally delight in virtue. The path of becoming human therefore begins with self-cultivation, then extends to family harmony, social order, and ultimately, peace under heaven. Confucius emphasized moral self-examination even in solitude, so that integrity arises from within. Taoism speaks of returning to one's original true nature. Buddhism teaches cultivation of goodness and liberation from suffering. Though expressed differently, all three traditions guide human beings toward higher moral realms. Traditional culture upholds compassion, tolerance, and humility. Laozi compared the highest goodness to water, which nurtures all things quietly, without contention. Confucius advocated universal care without distinction. Mencius regarded supreme goodness as the summit of human character. This spirit forged countless examples of moral integrity throughout history. Those who transcended personal gain and loss, upheld righteousness, and guided their lives by moral principle became enduring spiritual landmarks for later generations. They sought no worldly glory, yet preserved human dignity, leaving behind a lasting light across the ages. From all of this, it becomes clear that divinely transmitted culture revolves around morality as its central axis. It does not withdraw human beings from real life, but teaches them how to live rightly within it. When morality stands at the center, society remains at peace. Individuals remain grounded amid upheaval, and hope endures. Traditional culture also possesses extraordinary integrative power. Different schools of thought coexist and support one another, forming a living, dynamic whole. The principle of harmony without uniformity allows societies to develop without losing their roots. The flourishing Tang dynasty offers a clear example. When morality was honored, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism all thrived. Society achieved prosperity both materially and spiritually, leaving a legacy admired by later generations. All of this reveals a single truth. The true strength of divinely transmitted culture lies in morality. When human beings live in accord with the Tao, heaven and humanity remain in harmony. When morality guides the way, civilization does not merely survive, it endures. From the perspective of Western culture, especially within the biblical tradition, the core of moral life also centers on a living relationship between God and humanity. This is deeply similar to the Eastern principle of the unity between heaven and humankind. Yet it is expressed through the language of covenant, obedience, and love. The story by the Sea of Gennesaret offers a powerful illustration. It is far more than a miraculous catch of fish. It is a foundational moral lesson that shapes the entire Christian worldview. In the setting of ordinary life, long hours of exhausting labor, and repeated failure through the night, human beings come face to face with their own limitations. When Jesus invites Simon Peter to put out into deep water, this invitation goes beyond practical instruction. It is a call to trust that surpasses personal experience and human calculation. Peter responds with humble obedience. He does not hide his failure, does not exaggerate his efforts, and does not offer excuses to refuse. It is precisely this posture that opens the way for the miracle. Within the Western moral tradition, this moment reveals a core principle. Grace does not arise from human ability, but from humility before God. Peter's next response makes this moral axis even clearer. When confronted with the extraordinary, he does not become proud or assume he deserves it. Instead, he falls at Jesus' feet and acknowledges his own sinfulness, unworthiness, and inner poverty. In biblical culture, this self-awareness does not diminish a person. On the contrary, it becomes a reliable sign of authentic moral life. Just as Mary recognizes herself as a lowly servant, humility always serves as the doorway through which God enters the human heart. At the very moment Peter asks Jesus to depart from him, God draws nearer than ever. This reveals a profound moral paradox in Western thought. When a person stops trying to possess God, God freely gives himself. From this point, Peter gains the inner strength to leave everything and follow Jesus, not for material reward, but out of love and a calling to save others. The entire moral life of Christianity is built upon this same foundation. Morality is not measured by achievements, numbers, or outward appearances. The parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector makes this unmistakably clear. The one who boasts of moral accomplishments stands far from God, while the one who recognizes inner poverty is welcomed. For this reason, Western culture remains deeply cautious of moral display regarding humility and vigilance as the most trustworthy measures of integrity. In the Gospels, Jesus repeatedly warns against confusing religious activity with true moral life. Prophesying, casting out demons, performing miracles, or constructing impressive institutions all fall short if life is not rooted in God's will. This reveals that Christian morality does not focus on external action, but on inner union with God, likened to a branch abiding in the vine. From this union, the human heart gradually becomes renewed. God is no longer experienced as a rigid system of laws, but as living love. At this point, Western culture meets the deeper current of Eastern God-given tradition. Morality is not meant to control human beings, but to transform them from within. For this reason, moral formation in Christianity does not begin by multiplying laws, but by shaping a heart capable of love. The new commandment Jesus gives at the Last Supper becomes the moral axis of Western civilization: love one another as I have loved you. This love is not mere emotion. It is sacrificial love, willing to carry the cross, to care for the salvation of others, and to place the good of the soul above personal comfort. Because of this moral principle, Western history has given rise to countless communities, monasteries, hospitals, schools, and charitable works. Those who lived by this spirit did not seek personal glory, but quietly gave and served. In this way, communities became communities of love, and through their lives they bore witness that God is love. From the story by the Sea of Gennesaret to the commandment of love, it becomes clear that Western culture, like Eastern culture, places morality at its very center. This morality is built upon humility, obedience to divine will, inner vigilance, and sacrificial love. When human beings live within this moral axis, the bond between heaven and humanity is restored, and within that restoration, people discover life meaning and enduring hope. Alongside the core values that must be practiced, Western moral tradition, especially within Christianity, also sets forth very clear prohibitions. These are not meant to bind people through fear, but to protect the human soul from self-destruction. They arise directly from Scripture and from the lived experience of the saints over many centuries. The first and most serious danger is spiritual pride. This is regarded as the root of all moral downfall. When a person begins to believe that they are more righteous than others, more knowledgeable than others, or more deserving of grace than others, they have already stepped onto the path of the Pharisee. Pride places a person in the position of judging rather than remaining humble, and in doing so, it quietly separates them from God, even while outward religious forms are still maintained. Closely related to this is the substitution of external actions for inner transformation. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes that God looks at the heart rather than appearances. When people focus on the number of good deeds they perform, religious achievements, or activities done in the name of God, while the heart lacks love, repentance, and obedience, those actions become empty. This explains why Jesus warns that some people prophesy, cast out demons, and perform miracles, yet are ultimately called evildoers because they do not live according to God's will. Another serious prohibition is treating God as a tool for personal gain. When prayer becomes centered only on asking for benefits, status, power, or personal security, without concern for God's will, the relationship with God is reversed. In Western God-given tradition, God is not an object of exchange, but the one to whom people entrust themselves and obey. There is also the danger of a hardened conscience. This occurs when people gradually grow accustomed to wrongdoing, justify evil, and lose the ability to examine themselves honestly. A person may continue religious practices and speak correct words, yet no longer feel inner reverence or moral trembling before sin. Christian tradition consistently emphasizes daily self-examination and regular repentance precisely to prevent this condition. Another subtle but serious danger lies in doing good in order to be seen. When the deeper motive behind charity service or sacrifice is praise or recognition, that goodness loses its value before God. Jesus clearly teaches that those who perform good deeds to be seen by others have already received their reward, and there is no spiritual reward remaining. Most importantly, believers are called never to separate morality from daily life. Western God-given culture does not view faith as something confined to church alone, but as a guiding principle for every decision in family life, work society, and even in moments unseen by others. When a person lives two lives, one outwardly moral and one hidden and contradictory, this inner division eventually leads to collapse. More concretely, biblical tradition, especially Christianity, teaches believers the following moral boundaries. First is the protection of innocent human life. In biblical morality, life belongs to God. Deliberately taking human life is therefore regarded as a grave sin, This includes murder. And within traditional Christian understanding, abortion is also viewed as an assault on life from its very beginning. Human life is not personal property to be decided by convenience, but a sacred gift that must be protected. Next is the prohibition against theft and unjust appropriation. This extends beyond stealing material goods to include fraud, exploitation, corruption, and the seizure of the labor or rights of the vulnerable. God-given morality rests on justice and respect for others, and every form of unjust taking disrupts the order God has established. Another crucial boundary is the protection of marriage and family. The family is regarded as the foundation of society and a sacred space. Adultery, sexual exploitation, and the destruction of marriage cause deep harm not only to individuals but to the entire community. In Scripture, marital faithfulness reflects the faithful relationship between God and humanity. There is also the prohibition against lying, false testimony, and manipulation of truth. Truth is seen as the light that enables upright living. When people lie, slander, or distort facts for personal gain, trust collapses and conscience erodes. This is why Western moral tradition places such importance on honesty and keeping one's word. Beyond outward behavior, Scripture also addresses unchecked desire and greed of the heart. It warns not only against taking what belongs to others, but against nurturing covetousness itself. It cautions not only against adultery in action, but against corrupt desire within the heart. This shows that God-given morality does not stop at law, but reaches into inner purity. One of the most foundational prohibitions is placing anything above God. Money, power, fame, ideology, or personal ego, when elevated to supreme importance, become idols. Classical Western tradition views idolatry as a root cause of moral decay, because it reverses the proper order between God and humanity. In simple terms, Western God-given morality protects four central pillars: life, family, truth, and justice. When these boundaries are respected, society stands on solid ground. When they are dismissed or rationalized away, moral crisis follows regardless of how advanced science or the economy may become. When moral boundaries collapse, the danger does not always appear as open rebellion or visible wrongdoing. Sometimes it takes a quieter form. It hides behind religious language, correct behavior, and respectable appearances. Scripture gives a clear name to this hidden corruption. The Bible calls it hypocrisy. What does the Bible really say about hypocrisy? To understand the root of this issue, we must first pause and clearly examine the meaning of the word hypocrisy itself. At its core, hypocrisy is the act of claiming to believe in something while living and acting in a completely different way. The term comes from a Greek word used for an actor, literally meaning one who wears a mask. In other words, it describes a person who puts on an outward image of morality, while their true inner life does not match that image. For this reason, in the Bible's view, hypocrisy is not merely a bad habit or a weakness of character. It is plainly identified as a sin, because it distorts the relationship between human beings and God, and also damages the way people relate to one another. When we look more closely, Scripture shows that hypocrisy commonly appears in two clear forms. The first is the act of professing faith with words, while living in a way that completely contradicts that faith. The mouth may speak of righteousness, but the life itself reflects selfishness, deceit, and indifference. The second is the attitude of despising and judging others, while one's own life remains full of unresolved faults and uncorrected shortcomings. This problem is not limited to modern times. From ancient days, the prophets spoke out strongly against it. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 29, verse 13, the prophet declares, "The Lord says, 'These people come near to me with their mouths and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is based on merely human rules they have been taught.'" Centuries later, Jesus himself repeated these words not to describe a distant past, but to confront the religious leaders of his own time. This is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 8 through 9. In the same spirit, John the Baptist showed no tolerance for empty religiosity. He demanded that those who claimed righteousness produce fruit worthy of repentance, as written in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, verse 8. Throughout his ministry, Jesus maintained an uncompromising stance against moral self-satisfaction. He did not soften his words or avoid the issue. He called hypocrites wolves in sheep's clothing in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. He compared them to whitewashed tombs in Matthew chapter 23, verse 27. He even referred to them as snakes and a brood of vipers, as recorded in Matthew chapter 23, verse 33. From here, Scripture leads us to a central principle. True righteousness cannot exist only on the outside. We cannot claim to love God while failing to love others in our daily lives. 1 John chapter 2, verse 9 states that anyone who says they love God but hates their brother or sister is not walking in the truth. Therefore, the love the Bible calls for must be sincere and without pretense, as reminded in the Book of Romans chapter 12, verse 9. A hypocrite may appear deeply religious and outwardly respectable, but that appearance is only a shell. True righteousness does not come from outward conformity or rigid observance of form. It comes from inner transformation by the Holy Spirit. This truth is made clear in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 5, and in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus used a simple yet piercing image to expose the heart of hypocrisy. He said, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." These words are recorded in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. Here, Jesus is not teaching people to ignore sin or to stop helping others change. Rather, he is warning against inner pride, the belief that one stands above others in a position of moral superiority, while refusing to examine oneself first. Scripture therefore urges us to examine our own hearts and correct our own faults before pointing out the failures of others, as echoed in the Book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 1. During his earthly ministry, Jesus repeatedly confronted the Pharisees. According to the Book of Acts, chapter 26, verse 5, they were experts in Scripture and extremely zealous in keeping every letter of the law. Yet their problem was their fixation on form. They searched for loopholes missed. The spirit of the law lacked compassion and often displayed their spirituality to gain praise from others. This is described in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 5 through 7, and in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verse 11. Jesus made it clear that what God desires is not outward perfection, but justice, mercy, and faithfulness, as written in Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. He affirmed that the problem was not the law itself, but the way it was practiced. Over time, the word Pharisee came to be used as a synonym for hypocrite in everyday language. Finally, Scripture clarifies an important distinction. Standing against sin is not hypocrisy. For example, teaching that drunkenness is sinful is not hypocrisy unless the one teaching repeatedly lives in drunkenness themselves. In that case, words and life no longer align. As children of God, we are called to pursue holiness, as taught in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 16. We are called to hate what is evil and cling to what is good, according to Romans chapter 12, verse 9. Everything we do should reflect the faith we confess and the new identity we have in Christ, because acting belongs on the stage. But a life of faith is meant to be lived honestly, day by day, choice by choice, in the presence of God. Christian morality, Jesus' teaching on the law. When we step back and look at Jesus' teaching as a whole, a clear pattern begins to emerge. Jesus never treated the law of the Old Testament as something disposable, nor did he approach it as a rigid code frozen in time. Instead, he consistently treated the law as something living, purposeful, and directed toward the transformation of the human heart. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus made this unmistakably clear. He did not deny the authority of the law or the prophets. On the contrary, he affirmed them, declaring that he had not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. The law, he said, would stand until heaven and earth pass away and until everything it pointed toward had been accomplished. In saying this, Jesus was not defending a shallow obedience that merely preserved the external shape of the law. He was calling his disciples to a righteousness that went deeper than that of the scribes and Pharisees. A righteousness rooted not in appearances, but in the inner life. This deeper righteousness becomes evident in the way Jesus interpreted specific commandments. Again and again, he moved beyond the surface requirement of a law and exposed its true intent. Murder was no longer confined to the act of taking a life. It began in anger, harbored in the heart. Adultery was no longer limited to physical infidelity. It was traced back to lustful intent. Oaths, retaliation, divorce, and even love itself were all lifted to a higher moral plane, where the focus shifted from external compliance to internal alignment with God's will. In some cases, this raising of the standard preserved the original command while intensifying its meaning. If anger itself is judged, then murder remains unequivocally wrong. In other cases, the raised standard replaced the older form of the command. If retaliation itself is rejected, then the principle of an eye for an eye no longer governs the conduct of Jesus' followers. What appears on the surface to be the setting aside of certain laws is in fact their fulfillment through elevation, not destruction. This same approach is evident in Jesus' treatment of the Sabbath. When criticized for allowing his disciples to pluck grain or for healing on the Sabbath, Jesus did not reject the Sabbath command. Instead, he interpreted it according to its purpose. The Sabbath was given for human good, not as a burden imposed upon humanity. From this purpose, Jesus asserted his authority as the Son of Man to determine what truly honors the Sabbath. Acts of mercy, healing, and restoration were not violations of the law, but expressions of its deepest intention. By interpreting the Sabbath in this way, Jesus established a principle that extends far beyond one commandment. Laws were to be understood in light of the good they were meant to serve. Just as the parapet on a roof in Deuteronomy was intended to protect life, not to mandate a specific architectural feature, so too, other laws must be understood through the lens of their underlying purpose. Faithfulness to the law then does not mean rigid imitation of ancient forms, but thoughtful obedience that preserves the heart of God's intention in changing contexts. Jesus applied this same principle to laws concerning purity. When he declared that nothing entering a person from the outside could defile them, he was not merely criticizing Pharisaic traditions. He was redefining purity itself. The food laws of Leviticus had served a symbolic role, marking Israel as distinct from the nations through outward practices. Jesus, however, called his followers to a purity that began within. What truly defiles a person, he taught, flows from the heart: evil thoughts, pride, deceit, and violence. In doing so, Jesus raised the standard of purity so high that the symbolic laws pointing toward it were no longer necessary. This inward focus later guided the apostles as they wrestled with the question of Gentile inclusion in the church. Circumcision and other boundary-marking laws had once distinguished Israel from the nations. But under the elevated standard of inner purity, these distinctions lost their defining role. What mattered was not the mark on the body, but the transformation of the heart, a truth the prophets themselves had anticipated when they spoke of circumcision of the heart rather than of the flesh. Jesus' elevation of the law reaches its clearest expression in the commandment he gave on the night before his death. He did not discard the command to love one's neighbor. He intensified it. Love was no longer measured by self-regard, but by Christ's own sacrificial love. This new commandment set the defining mark of discipleship, not in adherence to external rules, but in a lived, self-giving love that mirrors his own. Yet Jesus was also careful to acknowledge human limitation. When teaching on divorce, he set a standard that his own disciples found difficult to accept. In response, Jesus made a crucial distinction. His highest standards were intended for those who willingly receive them for the sake of the kingdom of God. Not everyone is able to live at that level, and Jesus did not pretend otherwise. This distinction reveals that his moral vision was not designed as a universal civil code, but as a calling for those who choose to follow him. This helps explain why Jesus said relatively little about civil law. He recognized the necessity of legal structures that account for human hardness of heart, yet his primary concern was not the regulation of society, but the transformation of persons. Earthly authorities had their place, but their authority was ultimately derived from God and limited by his purposes. When Jesus summarized the law, he did not replace it with something simpler. He revealed its unifying center. Love for God and love for neighbor, he taught, are not alternatives to the law and the prophets. They are the thread that holds them together. Every command finds its meaning and direction in love rightly understood and rightly lived. This understanding reaches its climax in the New Covenant. At the Last Supper, Jesus declared that his blood would inaugurate a covenant marked by forgiveness of sins. With his sacrifice, the systems of sacrifice and ritual that once mediated forgiveness were fulfilled and surpassed. The reality to which they pointed had arrived. The sanctuary, the priesthood, and the offering were not abolished, but transformed and perfected in him. Under this new covenant, obedience to the law is no longer driven by human effort alone. Jesus taught Nicodemus that entry into the kingdom requires new birth by water and the Spirit. The prophets had promised this renewal long before a cleansing from sin, a new heart, and the indwelling Spirit who enables God's people to walk in his ways. The law is no longer merely written on tablets of stone. It is written on the heart by the Spirit of God. This new relationship with the law does not eliminate the need for teaching. Jesus commanded his disciples to teach others to obey everything he had taught them. The Spirit works through instruction, shaping lives through the words and example of Christ. When disputes arose in the early church, particularly over the place of the Mosaic law for Gentile believers, the apostles consistently returned to Jesus' teaching. They refused to impose laws that addressed only outward purity while calling believers to restrain their freedom for the sake of love and unity. What mattered was not the letter of the law as Moses had given it, but the law as Christ had fulfilled and elevated it. Paul's teaching follows this same trajectory. Though he spoke forcefully against reliance on the law for justification, he never dismissed the moral vision the law embodied. Instead, he taught that through faith and the Spirit, believers fulfill the law's righteous requirement. External markers fall away, but commands rooted in love, holiness, and faithfulness remain. In this sense, Christians live under the law of Christ. The law is taught, fulfilled, and elevated by Jesus himself. Taken together, Jesus' teaching presents a coherent moral vision. The law is not discarded, nor is it preserved unchanged. It is fulfilled by being raised. Its deepest intent is revealed in love. Its power is supplied by the Spirit, and its goal is a transformed people who live faithfully before God, not merely by outward conformity, but from renewed hearts shaped by Christ. Seen as a whole, Jesus' teaching on the law gives a remarkably coherent answer to the practical question of how Christians are meant to live. He does not call his followers to abandon the Old Testament law, nor does he ask them to preserve it unchanged as a static code. Instead, he calls them by the power of the Holy Spirit to live out the law as it was always meant to be lived. Interpreted according to its purpose and raised to the higher standard, he revealed most clearly in the Sermon on the Mount. When the law is approached in this way, its internal logic becomes clear. Some commandments are deepened and extended. The prohibition against murder, for example, now reaches into the realm of anger reconciliation and the inner disposition of the heart. Other commandments, such as the food laws, are not merely relaxed or ignored, but effectively replaced by a more demanding requirement, one that no longer concerns outward markers of holiness, but inward purity before God. What appears at first glance to be inconsistency is in fact the consistent application of a single principle, the law fulfilled by being raised. Read in this light, the teaching of Paul need not be set against the teaching of Jesus. Paul's insistence that believers are not justified by works of the law does not negate obedience. Rather, it clarifies the source of obedience. The law is no longer kept as a means of earning righteousness, but fulfilled through a life shaped by faith and empowered by the Spirit. What the law sought to produce through external command, God now accomplishes through internal renewal. In this sense, Paul's vision of life in the Spirit aligns closely with Jesus' own teaching on the transformed heart. This understanding also helps to address the long-standing confusion reflected in the many competing views outlined at the beginning of the discussion. Much of that confusion arises from treating the law as either wholly binding or wholly abolished. Jesus' approach allows for neither extreme. The law remains authoritative, yet its authority is expressed through fulfillment rather than repetition. Its moral demands are not lowered, but intensified. Its ceremonial and symbolic elements are not discarded arbitrarily, but rendered unnecessary by the reality to which they pointed. When the law is read through the lens of Jesus' teaching, the apparent fragmentation begins to resolve. The diverse commands of Scripture converge around a single moral vision, a life oriented toward God, marked by love, shaped by holiness, and sustained by grace. Obedience is no longer a matter of external compliance, but of inward alignment with God's will. The believer's task is not to choose between law and grace, but to live under grace in a way that truly fulfills the law. In this way, Jesus' teaching does more than settle a theological debate. It offers a practical and spiritually coherent path for Christian living, one that honors the Old Testament, embraces the transforming work of the Spirit, and calls believers to a righteousness that reflects the character of God Himself. Taken together, the teaching of Jesus draws a clear moral horizon for those who choose to follow Him. He does not merely offer advice, nor does He establish a loose ethical framework that bends with circumstance. What He sets before His disciples is a way of life shaped by truth, restrained by love, and governed by reverence for God. Within that way of life, there are clear boundaries, limits that protect the soul rather than restrict it. Jesus consistently directs attention to the heart because it is there that moral life truly begins. Sin in His teaching is not confined to visible acts, nor is righteousness measured by outward restraint alone. Anger, unchecked desire, indulged pride nourished, and mercy withheld all fall within the moral concern of the kingdom of God. By speaking this way, Jesus establishes a higher moral threshold for His followers, one that reaches beyond legal compliance and into the inner life where motives are formed and choices take shape. At the same time, Jesus is careful to distinguish between the calling of His disciples and the standards by which the world operates. He does not attempt to impose His highest moral demands on society at large, nor does He confuse spiritual obedience with civil enforcement. His commands are directed to those who willingly submit themselves to His lordship, who desire to live for the sake of the kingdom of God. This distinction is crucial. It preserves the integrity of Christian ethics while acknowledging human limitation and freedom. The moral limits Jesus sets are therefore not arbitrary rules, but expressions of divine wisdom. They define what love looks like in practice. Love in His teaching never excuses sin, never celebrates wrongdoing, and never abandons truth. Instead, love fulfills the law by guiding the believer away from actions that harm others, corrupt the heart, or distort the image of God within. To step beyond these limits is not an act of freedom, but a departure from the life Jesus calls His followers to live. Yet Jesus does not leave His disciples to carry this moral weight alone. The boundaries He establishes are inseparable from the grace He provides. Through the Holy Spirit, believers are given the power to walk within these limits, not perfectly, but faithfully. Moral failure is not met with abandonment, but with a call to repentance and renewal. In this way, obedience becomes a response to grace, not a prerequisite for it. Ultimately, the ethical vision of Jesus calls His followers to live visibly different lives that reflect the character of God in a world shaped by self-interest and compromise. These lives are marked by restraint, where the world indulges, by forgiveness, where the world retaliates, and by humility, where the world seeks dominance. The limits Jesus sets do not diminish human dignity, they preserve it. They are the boundaries within which true freedom, genuine love, and lasting faith are able to grow. To follow Jesus, then, is to accept not only his promises, but his moral authority. It is to live consciously before God, allowing his teaching to shape thought, desire, and action. Within those boundaries, the believer finds not confinement, but clarity and a way of life that bears witness to the holiness and mercy of the one who taught it. Whether in the East or the West, whether people are shaped by Confucian, Taoist, Buddhist traditions, or by biblical faith, one undeniable truth has remained constant throughout human history. Morality is the foundation of the individual, of society, and of every civilization. When morality is preserved, people learn to restrain themselves, to revere heaven, and to respect one another. Order is maintained, trust is nurtured, and life itself is protected. But when morality declines, no matter how advanced science becomes, no matter how sophisticated legal systems grow, society still falls into disorder because it has lost its inner anchor, the force that governs human behavior from within. From a logical perspective, every external system of laws can function effectively only when people still uphold internal moral standards. Law controls behavior, but morality governs intention. Punishment may prevent crime from being expressed, but only morality prevents crime from being conceived. For this reason, all great human traditions, despite differences in language or ritual, ultimately converge on a single axis. Human beings must live truthfully, act with goodness, and practice patience in order to overcome desire, anger, and selfishness. In Christianity, Jesus calls people to live in truth, to love without conditions, and to endure suffering for the sake of what is good. In Eastern thought, truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance are regarded as the highest standards for self-cultivation and harmony with heaven and earth. These paths do not oppose one another. They meet at the same point. Human beings become truly noble only when they learn to restrain themselves through morality. Truth keeps people from deceiving themselves and others. Goodness prevents harm to life and conscience. Forbearance allows people to endure trials without losing their humanity. Therefore, what matters most is not which culture one belongs to, which tradition one follows, or which part of the world one inhabits. What matters most is whether morality is still held as the foundation of life. When morality is honored, there remains a way back. When morality is disregarded, material achievements, sooner or later, become the cause of collapse. Upholding truth. Goodness and forbearance is not nostalgia for the past. It is a matter of survival for the present and the future of humanity. In daily life, truthfulness begins with honesty toward oneself. It is the courage to examine one's own motives, to admit mistakes, and to refuse self-justification for the sake of protecting the ego. A person who lives by truthfulness does not need to be perfect, but they do not deceive themselves. They speak honestly when possible, keep their word when they make promises, and refuse to build their lives on false appearances or manufactured images. In work, truthfulness means fulfilling one's duties without deceit for short-term gain. In relationships, it means communicating clearly without manipulation or exploitation of trust. When truthfulness is upheld, the inner life becomes stable because there is no longer fear of exposure or collapse. Goodness follows when truth does not remain merely an idea, but becomes action. Living with goodness does not mean weakness or allowing oneself to be trampled. It means choosing not to harm, even when one has the power to do so. In everyday life, goodness appears in small decisions. Refusing to speak words that wound, refusing to profit from another's suffering, refusing to gain wealth by destroying the environment or human dignity. Goodness is also the willingness to help within one's capacity without expectation of reward. More importantly, goodness preserves humanity in difficult circumstances where selfishness is often mistaken for intelligence. Forbearance is what allows truth and goodness to endure over time. In reality, living truthfully and kindly rarely brings immediate rewards. Those who live rightly are often misunderstood, disadvantaged, or even mocked. Forbearance is not blind submission. It is the strength to endure pressure, injustice, and delay without abandoning one's moral principles. Forbearance prevents reactions driven by anger, resists retaliation when insulted, and refuses to trade moral values for short-term relief. Through forbearance, people retain a long-term vision, understanding that the fruits of a moral life do not always appear immediately, but they always leave lasting consequences. When truth, goodness, and forbearance are present together in daily life, an inner order emerges. The mind is no longer dragged by ambition, fear, or hatred. Relationships become healthier, built on trust and respect. Work becomes a means of serving life rather than a place where conscience is sacrificed. Society, though imperfect, can remain stable when enough individuals regulate their behavior through morality. Most importantly, living by truth, goodness, and forbearance preserves human dignity even as the world shifts and trembles. When external circumstances change, inner values become the anchor. This is not merely a good way to live, it is a sustainable way to live. A quiet but enduring path that keeps people from losing themselves in an age of constant trial. And regardless of what one calls it in the East or the West, the Bible reminds us clearly that a silent battle is taking place within the human mind and moral conscience. Satan's strategy does not begin with open violence or visible destruction. It begins with the distortion of standards by persuading people to trivialize truth, despise goodness, and abandon forbearance in small, ordinary moments. Satan does not need people to deny God outright. He only needs them to compromise little by little. One lie to avoid trouble. One wrong action because everyone does it. One moment of resentment instead of patient endurance. Over time, conscience becomes dull. Moral boundaries fade and people grow accustomed to living without self-examination before heaven. This is why Jesus' teaching always returns to the core command: stay watchful. Satan does not destroy people by throwing them into the abyss all at once, but by convincing them that morality is negotiable, that truth can be bent, that compassion is weakness, and that endurance is failure. When people accept these lies, they have already wandered far from the path God intended. Holding firmly to truth, goodness, and forbearance is therefore not merely a moral choice. It is an act of spiritual vigilance. It is how a person places themselves beyond the reach of deception. A truthful person is not easily deceived. A compassionate person is not easily led into cruelty. A forbearing person is not easily provoked into betraying their own conscience. In this age of confusion, where information overwhelms and values our inverted vigilance against Satan's schemes does not mean fearing the world. It means safeguarding the inner foundation. When people continue to revere God, respect morality, and exercise self-control, then no matter how widespread darkness becomes, it cannot claim their souls. And perhaps this is the final reminder. As we bring this journey to a close, Satan does not win when people are weak. He wins when people abandon morality in exchange for convenience. But when people hold fast to truth, so they do not deceive themselves, hold fast to goodness, so they do not harm others, and hold fast to forbearance, so they do not lose their humanity, then even as the world changes, they remain standing before God. And now, as this long day gently comes to an end, allow your mind to grow quiet. There is no need to struggle further, no need to justify yourself, no need to carry the weight of the world into your sleep. What you needed to discern, you have discerned. What you needed to protect, you have recognized. The rest place into God's hands. As you lie down tonight, remember that Satan can sow seeds only where morality has been loosened. But where vigilance remains, where truth prevents self-deception, where goodness protects life, and where forbearance preserves humanity, that place still belongs to heaven. Your sleep is not an escape. It is rest in peace, because you have chosen what is right. Let the heaviness of today settle. Let your conscience be at ease. Let your heart grow light. And if in the quiet of the night you whisper a prayer, even softly, heaven still hears. May you be protected through the night. May your mind find rest. May you awaken with greater clarity, greater strength, and a firmer commitment to what is good. Good night.